Our hero's name is Wong Sha. Like other students, he used to live a calm and carefree life until one moment. The boy was very successful in sports, surpassing all his peers, especially in track and field. However, this did not last long. One day, the boy got into a fight with a robber to protect a girl, and after this incident, he became disabled. After this event, his life changed dramatically. Friends who were supposedly his brothers showed their true colors. He had already begun to think that there was no point in living any longer, until he found a very interesting phone. With the help of this mysterious device, he can now improve and become stronger. Images appear in his head, and from that moment on, he began to understand that his life had changed again. Soon, thanks to this wonderful technology, he was able to master the martial art of Tanzho, which surprised him at first. One fine day, our hero was walking down the stairs and overheard a conversation between his friends. The girl was indignant that the delivery men had deceived her. The bespectacled man froze and could hear the blonde ranting at the delivery guys, saying that they said the delivery would be free and now they want to get paid. Besides, this box was quite large in size and weighed almost 50 kilograms, which made her even more angry. The men just looked at her and sighed heavily. One of them confirmed that delivery to her home would be free and nothing more. But he still wasn't going to give in to her. He gave an example of shopping in a supermarket. She has to pay for the bag, and even more so for physical labor. The blonde was still unhappy and grimaced. She still thought that she had just been deceived. In order not to continue this unpleasant conversation further, she agreed to find someone who could help her, and the guys immediately said goodbye to her. And at this moment, Wong Sha intervened in their conversation and offered his help. His sister looked at him with slight confusion, and those men's jaws almost dropped. The girl sighed heavily and slapped her face with her palm. She was ashamed that her brother was showing off again. Our hero did not answer her and silently approached the box. The brunette tried to lift it and realized that it was really quite heavy. His sister began to worry that he might break what was lying there. The delivery men looked at him and started laughing loudly. They think that a cripple like him should stand aside and not move. No one will come to his aid if he falls and gets crushed by this box. But it seemed that Wong Sha didn't listen to them and still tried to lift this load. And soon, the boy really succeeded, and the men's jaws nearly dropped in surprise. He turned to his sister and suggested that she simply walk with him silently further. And those two seemed not to expect such a turn of events at all, and simply stood silently to the side. They watched him go even as he walked up the stairs with his sister. It didn't seem like it was even hard for him. When the guys arrived at the place, the girl thanked him for his help with a wide smile. The girl laughed and said that the guy would still have to pay for the accommodation. But considering that he had helped her, she promised to allow him to delay the payment for a couple of days. The blonde began to fuss over her purchase. She ordered a large refrigerator. In addition, she allowed our hero to take the chicken that was left on the table, and he pretended to be very happy, after which he immediately pretended that he had a lot of things to do today and quickly ran to the exit door. It seemed that she was very upset that others found it difficult to even sit with her. The boy finally waited for the moment when he could be alone, and sitting down on the floor, he took his phone out of his pocket. After digging around in it a bit, he noticed that he was convinced that the game characteristics completely and entirely influenced his real life. It can be concluded that he can find martial arts to enhance his abilities. Moreover, he will also have access to a healing elixir that will be able to restore his leg. But what impressed him even more was that, with the help of this app, he would be able to get a cool car. It was for this reason that the boy transferred part of his money into demonic currency. After constantly rereading the same text, Wang Xiao's eyes began to hurt, so he decided to take a little break. The guy decided to double-check his current account after replenishing it, and was simply shocked. He couldn't believe his eyes that 200 yuan was being charged for 2 currencies. Now he completely doubted that he would be able to buy anything with it. As far as he knows, only the rich are allowed to enjoy such shops to the fullest, and so he decides to come back to it later. Suddenly, an old man spoke to him and said that this was a flea market. If he bought one thing here, he would get the second one as a gift, and there were also big discounts. He invited our hero to come closer and examine the new goods that he had just collected from the dump, which Wang Xiao was very shocked by. He received a notification that the book he wanted to buy costs 1 demonic currency. It looks like the brunette already wanted to press the right button to make the purchase. However, at the very last moment he abandoned this idea. Now is not the best time to spend money on some junk, and decided to browse further. He found some Tianjiao technique and began to carefully read its characteristics. It seemed that it was not as effective as the black pearl ointment. However, it satisfied him quite well. And besides, there was a big promotion on it. The price went down, which means, as he thinks, this is now his only way to cure his disability. He now has literally one day to find the missing amount of money, and so he jumps up and runs to work because he will have to pay a much larger sum for being late. And that's why the boy now went outside and got on the nearest bus. Looking out the window, Wong Sha recalls not the best moments of his life. He clearly remembers that day of being admitted to the hospital. The inheritance that his parents gave him especially for him was taken by the hospital. After that, his life changed dramatically. He left the school where he studied. His social circle has practically dropped to zero. He lives alone. The young man now understands perfectly well that it will be quite difficult, even practically impossible, to get such a large sum as 1,800 yuan on his own in a day. And right before entering, our hero decides that he will not beg from anyone. Just as he was about to knock politely on the door, a familiar voice suddenly addressed him, causing him to shudder. This is his old friend. He knows very well how his acquaintance became crippled and then dropped out of school. The blonde asked his friends to put everything aside and come to them. They certainly wouldn't expect such guests. The other guys looked at him with laughter and were slightly surprised at what kind of comrade had come to visit them. A small group gathered, and they all made fun of their old friend. Everyone in turn began to cling to him and looked at him from all sides. But the bespectacled man stood and only turned his head from side to side, not knowing what to answer. Wang Xiao now has too little time for all this talk, and so he decided to get down to business and immediately tell that he has a big problem. He needs to raise money for the treatment of his leg. The brunette told them the amount and asked to borrow it. While the smile had already fallen from their faces, they looked at each other. One of the guys said in a confused voice that he was also broke right now, referring to the fact that he literally has a sick mother under his wing and she doesn't bring him any money. Another friend of his also picked up on this idea, found an excuse that he spent everything on a mobile game, which another one did too. Our hero, it seems, immediately realized that they were lying to him and was a little confused. Since he couldn't directly hold them accountable for it, he decided to thank them for listening to him and asked them to forget about his request. Van thought that after this he would be left alone and was about to leave. But then one of them stopped him and offered him a snack. Besides this, the guys noticed his thinness and let it slip that they were having a party in the dorm that day, after which everything became clear to our hero. Only after his look did they realize that they had said too much and began to make up excuses on the fly. The boy felt uncomfortable and pulled his hand away. He no longer wanted to continue this dialogue, but then the blonde stopped him, assuring him that these two could not help him in any way. But he could. After rummaging through his pockets, the guy found a small amount of money and realized that he only had a little of it. However, he didn't notice at all how his wallet fell out of his pants, and it was full of much larger bills. Wang Xiao noticed it. The bespectacled man looked him straight in the eyes and thanked him for the offer of help, but refused to accept it and asked him to keep all the money for himself. The guys from his company were in a slight shock, how big his savings were there, and the blonde tried in every way to stop the cripple, but he did not listen to him and walked on. The boy shouted at the two and rushed to pick up his wallet. The others frowned and looked angrily at Wang Xiao. They did not understand why he was offended at them, because they wanted to treat him out of politeness. In addition, they tried to shame our hero for asking for money on loan, after which, as expected, the humiliation began. The guys think that since he was the coolest in school, now everything is different. They also think that because of this stupid behavior he is now causing financial problems for his parents, he is of no use. The blonde looked after him, and it was his business that he even refused the money when it was sincerely offered to him. Van stopped and gritted his teeth as he listened to their quarrels. Behind him, a loud laugh was heard. The company began to discuss how their party, into which they had invested a lot of their own money, would go. They began to provoke him into emotions as if on purpose, describing what food they would eat there and loudly discussing plans. While the bespectacled man got ready and silently left the place, afterwards he heard how they were actively discussing not only the party, but also the game they had donated to. And our hero remembers very well how some guys were pestering his friend at the time when he was deprived of attention from girls. And that day he stood up for him. A fight broke out where he got a good beating. And not only to him, he came to help, lent money, saved the last few months and kept his debts under control. It was quite difficult. However, when he saw their true faces, he realized that all this time their friendship was just a waste of time. The bespectacled man was not afraid to say this out loud. He really believes that now, since he has no one left, he can only rely on himself. He was very tired from all the events that had befallen him recently, and he went to a store to see his friend. Wang Sha took out some money and asked them to bring him what he always ordered here. The man already knew perfectly well that it was about booze, and brought him a bottle, asking him not to tell anyone that he had sold it to him. Our hero removed the lid with a light movement of his hand and, going outside, began to sip his favorite drink. It seems that he is very happy that he can calm down like this and endure the incredible heat. It became much easier for him. While he moved his hand to the side, he did not notice how someone approached him, and then, abruptly, snatched it away. The bottle was thrown into a trash can that stood nearby, and it seemed that the bespectacled man got angry and, turning around, shouted at the one who dared to do this. But it seems that this man was quite familiar to him. He even stopped raging. Standing in front of him was his girlfriend, Fangqin Shu, with her arms crossed over her chest. When the girl saw him, she immediately recognized him and started shouting back. She doesn't like this behavior of her friend. He hadn't changed at all during all this time they hadn't seen each other. The brunette dropped out of school and didn't tell her absolutely anything. It seemed like he hadn't gained any intelligence. The boy looked at her coolly and reminded her that he was no longer a student, and therefore she did not need to worry about him, and besides, she had no right to do so. His girlfriend looked at him and rolled her eyes. Still, his character hasn't changed at all. Still just as mischievous, but Wang Xiao thinks otherwise. After all, it's she who is mostly capricious. Hearing such criticism about herself, Fangqin became angry and asked him to drink at home instead of in public. The guy didn't want to hear it anymore, and so, laughing slightly, he got up from his chair and was about to leave. And only now, the girl realized that she might have offended him and asked him to stop. Our hero interrupted her and asked why she was so upset, and reported that everything was fine with his leg. He decided to compare himself to a cockroach because she called him an insect, and he can survive even in the apocalypse. When the long-haired girl saw that he was about to leave, she tried to stop him because she wanted to finish what she wanted to tell him. The brunette calmed her down, saying that she didn't irritate him at all, and compared their meeting to his meeting with his mother. And yet, he would not like to continue this dialogue. The guy turned everything to the fact that he had urgent business and asked to contact him if he wanted at another time. However, he completely forgot that she didn't even have his number. The girl would like to know it, and to make sure he did it, she promised to give him something good, but still, the boy insisted on his own and refused. Even despite his harsh reactions, the girl was not going to back down, and asked if he was sure that he really didn't want to look at it before making such a decision. And finally, before leaving, she said that she would leave him right now. Finally, the girl's stubbornness won out. Wang Xiao turned around and shouted indignantly. She had been mocking him in this way for quite a long time, and it irritated him. This time, Fangqin really didn't deceive him and prepared something, and she took out some small bag from her pocket and began to tease him that something red was visible there. It seems that in this way she managed to attract the attention of her friend. He looked at her in surprise. The former classmate continued to tease him in this way, shaking the bag a little. And then, Wang Xiao decided to pounce on him and just snatch him out of his hands, but it was not so easy. She abruptly pulled her hand up. In exchange for this little surprise, she wants to get his phone number and address. Our hero fell for this trick and quickly wrote everything down for her on a piece of paper. After reading everything that was written, she was not surprised in principle. He doesn't even have a landline phone, and yet she agreed to help this pathetic boy. However, before that, she wants to be shown respect. But even though Wang Xiao Beggar Yi doesn't hide it, he doesn't intend to accept other people's gifts. The girl literally started bragging that she was a good student and had a decent scholarship. But the boy turned around and waved his hand. Of course, he did this to distract attention. But he suddenly turned around and snatched the bag from her hands. She certainly didn't expect this, after which our hero threw himself into her arms and thanked her for her help, promising to return everything he took at the first opportunity. And finally, he reminded them that he remains the winner in all their competitions and said a sweet goodbye. Fangqin stood there slightly confused. She didn't expect that her friend had so much courage to do such a thing. But after a while, she came to her senses and scolded him. She cannot believe that he dared to take advantage of her like that. However, she didn't succeed, and after a couple of minutes, the boy had already run away from her at a decent distance. In fact, even despite their seemingly unpleasant conversations, he does not have a formed bad opinion of her. The guy sincerely believes that this girl has no bad qualities at all. Now, the most important thing is to think about the main thing. He just needs to get 800 yuan somewhere. While he was walking the streets, He came up with an idea that he immediately wanted to implement. He didn't like this place very much, but Wang Xiao had no other choice. The brunette came to the restaurant where he works every night and saw several of his colleagues chatting among themselves. Of course, if he needed the full amount, he wouldn't even think of coming here, but since we're talking about part of it, why not try? The first one to see him was his boss, who looked at him with displeasure. The man seemed to notice that it was still too early for his worker to go on shift. But even though our hero showed initiative and wanted to start earlier, this will not affect his salary in any way. The bespectacled man did not pay attention to his words and asked his manager Yu to discuss something with him. Wang Xiao decided not to delay and say directly that she wanted to get an advance, because he was currently short on money. To which the man replied that 2 cleaners had quit today, and if he took on their work, then their salary would increase and his request would be fulfilled. However, the boy thinks that this old man has something in mind, but even despite this, he needs this money now, and his colleagues began to whisper among themselves and laugh. The brunette left their conversation and simply decided to look at them intently. The workers immediately noticed his gaze on them and decided to just continue working. It was none of their business. Their boss watched their conversation and just smirked. And our hero, without thinking twice, agreed to his conditions. However, he asked for an advance payment of 800 wen. The old man doesn't seem to mind. If the boy is ready to take on this job, then it won't cause any problems at all. However, there are still conditions. This place must shine during this work shift, so that everything is fair. The guys agreed that if Wang Xiao cleaned the toilet on the 3rd floor now, he would receive an advance, after which the bespectacled man immediately went to work. He found the right rag and began to clean everything until it sparkled. He really needs this money, and that's why he really tries to do what he has to do well. Of course, any such work is exhausting. He needed to take some breaks, at least for 2 minutes. Soon, the brunette finished, and after that he stands and watches the result. All thanks to his mobile game, it changed him, or rather, his strength. In addition, it became much easier for him to work. His endurance and energy also increased, and such loads are practically nothing to him. Finally, the bespectacled man could happily announce to his manager Yu that he had finished cleaning. The old man was slightly surprised that Wang Xiao was able to handle everything so quickly, and he even felt offended that he had not paid attention to such a productive worker in his circle before. Now he is tormented by the fact that he had to hire 2 workers before, although this boy would have been enough for him. As agreed, the boss paid him the required amount, but when Van was about to leave, he stopped him. Was he really going to run away right away? As it turned out, the colleague had some other plans. He urgently needed to go to the terminal outside, and he was not going to wait. The boy promised that he would now put the money into his account and return immediately, and his boss calmed down. He was not at all afraid that he could run away. The bespectacled man didn't immediately understand what he was talking about, but he didn't attach much importance to his words, and our hero himself found a secluded place and took out his phone. He urgently needed to log into his favorite mobile game. Now he is a little worried, because it is this application that should restore his leg. And finally, after a couple of minutes, Wang Xiao finds the button he needs. He is very happy that he can finally buy an upgrade. The payment was successful. The brunette received a special skill and can now restore his leg for 1 hour a day. This is of course good, but it seems that the schoolboy is not entirely happy with this. He worked hard just for this. This is not enough for him, and therefore he would like to find some other possible way. Suddenly, a hint appeared on his phone that at the next level the time would increase to as much as 3 hours a day, and the maximum duration would be as much as 9 hours. And if you think about it, this technique cannot completely restore his leg, but it has good capabilities, and in difficult situations it will really help save his life. Just the thought that he will be able to improve his leg for a long time makes him very happy. It will open up so many opportunities that he could only dream of all this time. Now he should study the program interface in more detail to see how it can improve. All these price tags with the services that the program offers are quite large. Of course, he will have to pay for it. Everything costs money, but still, it seems, this does not stop the bespectacled man. He wants to feel again after such a long time what it is like to have a healthy, normal leg. But still, the guy needs to forget about it, because even such a small progress is already good, and this should be used only as a last resort. He knows very well that the merchant updates items daily. If he can learn another additional technique, he will gain a skill. He would also like to find books that are similar to his martial arts technique. Wang Xiao sets a goal for himself to earn as much money as possible, because nothing is impossible when you have it. The bespectacled man got up from the floor and began to look around. He needed to keep this 1 hour a day for emergencies. He is very lucky that thanks to his new skills, working here is no longer a big problem for him. He can finish it quickly, but the rest of the time he can spend on other activities. His strength and endurance have increased. Now he is not afraid that he will lose her, and that is why he immediately starts his new duties as a cleaner, but does not notice how the girl is rushing straight at him. The waitress was also in the clouds and didn't notice how she stepped on a wet and slippery mop. The bespectacled man looked at her with fear and became worried, asking out of politeness if everything was okay with her. It seemed like the blonde was slightly out of sorts and frowned. As soon as Wong Sha saw her face, he immediately blushed at her incredible beauty. She should definitely work as a model. But then, she yelled at him, because it was because of his mop that she almost spilled the soup. And then, the guy's first impression of her was ruined. He couldn't believe that such a beauty could be so angry and strict. And only now, the girl noticed that he was, after all, disabled. And yet she decided to turn a blind eye to this situation, asking him to be more careful next time. The bespectacled man didn't like this reaction. He got a little angry, she was too straightforward. The brunette looked after her as the girl approached the right table, and it seemed that the boy recognized it. This table where those very people were sitting. This group often eats here. They are famous gangsters, big and strong like gorillas, and no one knows who is the boss. These guys are also known for beating up all the waiters in this restaurant, and it seems like Wong Sha is the only one who has the brains to stay away from them. In order not to get a slap on the wrist from them, he never even looked in their direction. Suddenly, he notices one of the guys tripping a girl who is carrying soup. The blonde doesn't see anything and, muttering something under her breath, calmly carries the order. And then comes the moment when she trips and drops the bowl on one of them. The fat man screamed at the whole establishment. Boiling water hit him right on the hand, and the other guys started to worry about him. The girl was very confused and began to look at the guests with excitement. In order not to attract unnecessary attention to himself, Wang Xiao watched everything that was happening with a sidelong glance. And it seems that he already feels that something bad is going to happen. Things are taking a turn. The fat man rose from the table and began to shout loudly, demanding that he show himself to her immediately. The waitress was a girl with character, and therefore had no intention of answering him politely. She sincerely wanted to apologize, although she did not do it on purpose. However, such behavior and disgusting manners of communication pushed her, especially hearing it from a man. The blonde snorted at him in response and still said that it wasn't her fault. She was definitely tripped up. The guys in his company grimaced and began to stare at her. Our hero simply silently looked at this whole picture from the side. This girl really amazed him with her assertiveness and courage. She is fearless and doesn't think at all about what she says, which can cause problems. It's best not to anger people like them, but she doesn't know anything about it. Now, after all the words she had said to them, Wang Xiao became curious about what would happen next. Their boss began to look around and only grinned. The bald man began to complain that this impudent woman had spilled soup on him, and was also speaking to him in such a disrespectful tone. One of his companions turned to the girl, saying that there was no one there, and that no one could have tripped her. These words made the fat man even more angry. He came closer to her, gritting his teeth, while his comrade tried to calm him down. The director of this establishment noticed that the customers were making a fuss, and asked the bully not to pay attention to such trifles, and offered, as an apology, not to charge for the soup and also to compensate in the form of several more dishes. It seems that this rude guy didn't like this. He walked up to him and grabbed him by the shirt. But even in such a situation, the rowdy waitress began to defend her position. She does not understand why this inadequate person is still being offered free food. The boss felt even more unpleasant from her words. He could no longer restrain himself. Rage got the better of him, and he hit the man in the face. Other visitors were very frightened by the loud slap, and some even left the building. Even our hero shuddered, and could no longer simply look out from under Tishka. The gaze of others was focused only on them. Manager Wu fell to the floor unconscious from the powerful blow. Wang Shu recalls the last time when his boss was supposed to scold the waitress again, but he simply started apologizing to everyone to make up for her mistakes. It was also noticeable that this man was more afraid of his employee than of these people. And now the guy is becoming interested in who she really is. The blonde quickly took out her phone and dialed the police, threatening to call for backup if he did anything else. In response, Fatso only grinned and took the phone from her, throwing it on the table. Now she definitely wouldn't be able to do anything. He also ran his eyes over all the other visitors. Everyone stood in fear, whoever was left. and no one intended to call the police anymore. From such a sudden scolding, he should have paused for a minute. He stared at one point and thought about something. The brown-eyed girl took a step back when she noticed someone looking at her. The bald man grabbed her hand and began to laugh. And indeed, she had a terrible character. But he thought that even in this case there was no point in humiliating her so much. His subordinates decided to take her along and have a good time at karaoke without even asking her consent. Even though they had already grabbed her by the hand, the girl still continued to resist. She felt uncomfortable being in such company. It seems like he doesn't give a damn about any laws. He just keeps doing whatever he wants. The fat man threw the table up. All the dishes spilled out of it. The other people continued to watch them. He invited her to go with him, but the waitress was against it and tried to break free. And the policeman who arrived at the scene didn't seem to be going to do anything. He stood to the side, pretending not to see anything. Our hero noticed him and was very scared. It looks like things are bad. This was done by one of the restaurant's visitors, who managed to hide the phone and dial the required number. His friend came up to him and began to scold him for this. He clearly did it in vain. The man began to intimidate him by saying that if that gang found out anything, they would make him a cripple. He pointed his finger at our hero, suggesting that he had most likely insulted these guys and gotten what he deserved. Wang Sha simply watched all this and began to slowly get up from his seat. It seems that he was already tired of watching everything from the sidelines. He broke his mop with his foot. The boy walked towards the fat man with a menacing gait and put the tip of the knife to his neck. The bald man looked at him with displeasure but said nothing. The bespectacled man looked at him from under his forehead and in a menacing tone demanded that he take his hands off the girl. 3 guys who were in cahoots with this guy started to defend him. It would be better for him not to meddle in something that wasn't his business. One of the colleagues approached our hero and also tried to persuade him to retreat, but it looks like the boy was serious. He can do a lot now. Even though he is disabled, it does not limit him in any way. He still remains a human being. The bald man turned to him and began to laugh. Judging by the appearance of this fragile boy, you wouldn't say that he would have enough courage even to hurt him. Van is confident. He has never killed anyone before, he says. The guy put the sharp part of the stick to his throat. Even though he did this, he was still sure he knew how to do it. After his neck was slightly injured, Fatso retreated and offered a deal with a smile. He would let him go, and he would in turn let the girl go. Finally, the waitress is safe. She runs behind our hero. Still, even though the brunette looks confident, he is not capable of doing something cruel. But on the other hand, he can't even let anyone go just like that. He understands perfectly well now that if he picks up a stick now, the gang will attack him. There was silence in the restaurant, and at that moment a brilliant idea came to his mind. The guy went on his phone and remembered that he had an hour to recover his leg, and that is why he decides to take advantage of this moment and use the opportunity. After pressing the button, he began to feel a slight tickling sensation in the area of his leg. She is slowly starting to recover, which is noticeable. Some images of movements flashed through his head, which he clearly saw and remembered. The body began to feel some kind of lightness and a surge of strength. It seems that this is exactly the martial art of Tanzho. The bald man took out a napkin and began to wipe the wound that had been inflicted on him, after which he began to take off his outerwear, introducing himself as being from Xinfu Street. This time he wants to show what the consequences of his behavior will be. The girl was already afraid of them, and therefore became wary and watched carefully to see what would happen next. She started to panic and asked the guy to run away from here. She doesn't see that they have a chance of winning, considering that her defender's leg is injured. Right now, she wouldn't want him to be a hero, and she's trying in every way to convince him otherwise. But the brunette holds himself confidently. It seems that he is not afraid at all, and in his heart, he even finds it funny how scared she is. The bespectacled man stood right in front of her and didn't let her pass forward. For him, these hooligans were just small flies. The waitress still can't believe that he even manages to brag. At a moment like this, she sees how he can barely walk, and she can't imagine how he's going to fight them. These bullies were about to attack him. It seems that the boy managed to hurt their pride. They don't like such arrogance. They decided not to delay and attack him in a group all at once. The very first one swung right at his face, but luckily, Wang Sha managed to take a step back. The blonde closed her eyes in horror. She doesn't know what to do now. It seems to her that this poor guy's leg will soon give out completely. The boss praised the boys for their courage and hard work and looked at him mockingly. His friends continued to make fun of him, finding it amusing that some schoolboy was acting like a hero. Well, it seemed like he didn't give a damn what they thought about him. He stood there confidently and wasn't going to back down. The guys, seeing his stance, began to move back a little. It seemed to them that something was wrong here. Why was he standing so confidently? And it wasn't just them who noticed it, but also the waitress. She couldn't say a word. Our hero just grinned, looking at them. After that, the boy lifted his pants and saw that they were real, which surprised the waitress, and she stared at him intently. The bespectacled man looked at these bullies from under his forehead. How wrong it was to beat a disabled person for his injury. But now he wants to be shown what they are capable of. He continued to tease these scoundrels, saying that it tickled him when they hit him, as if it was not men but girls who did it. One of them looked at him with slight fear, as if it was impossible. Without thinking twice, the shaggy man ran up to him and hit him on the leg with the table. After that, he laughed loudly. He is now sure that after such a scolding, he will definitely become disabled. His boss decided to support him. He would like this impudent fellow to leave this world. Wong Sha simply snorted in response, once again feeling like he was being beaten by girls. Blue Eyes looked at Daredevil and laughed, telling him to step aside and not to disgrace himself with his fighting skills. It seemed that this made them quite tense and they began to look at each other. The girl looked at this whole picture and was very glad that they stood up for her. This stranger is really strong. And the blonde stepped back and began to rub his hand. He was already starting to get irritated by the fact that they couldn't break it. The bespectacled man continues to laugh at him. He was practically not hurt by these fists. After realizing that even well-trained soldiers were no match for him, the guy became much more confident in himself and looked into their eyes with a smile. Wong Sha now turned to the main offender who had tripped the girl and stated clearly that he had seen him do it. The blonde looked at him intently and sweated slightly from nerves. He didn't think anyone saw it. Before he could even react to this, he received a fist in the face for what he had done. He clearly deserved it. Our hero pushed him to the floor with his foot and demanded that he not look at others and not pretend as if he had not done it. The boy passed out from such a strong blow, and now he won't be able to look at anyone. His comrades looked at him with slight horror, then at their new enemy. The brunette noticed their confused looks and laughed a little, and now it's the turn of others. Our hero calls the next opponent to him. The girl looked at him carefully. He turned out to be really strong, but she initially thought that this boy just wanted to show off in front of her. It was as if she was now in a martial arts movie. Their boss turned to his guys and asked if they had seen what had just happened. It seems that they haven't yet realized who they're up against, and so our hero suggests that they resolve everything right now. The bald man stands and just grinds his teeth, not knowing what to do now. Suddenly, behind him, he hears other visitors mocking these losers. His friends approached him and asked what they should do in this situation. The fat man stopped and thought for a moment. The way Wong Sha scratched him with that piece of wood was quite humiliating. And besides, he beat up one of his brothers. He should have admitted at this point that he really had underestimated our hero. Now he decided not to push anyone in his place, but to attack himself, and swung his fist at the boy. And Wong Sha stood there as if nothing had happened and was able to easily intercept his fist with one hand. The brunette began to laugh at him. "What kind of speed is this? Like a turtle's?" The bully tried to land a couple more blows on him, but nothing worked. Our hero began to laugh. It was still very slow, no matter how hard he tried, but it looks like now it's time to show him what real speed is. The brunette came closer to him and was now about to kick him. The bald man only managed to cover himself with his hand, and it looks like he got hit hard on the fingers. So much so that a fracture occurred, causing him to scream throughout the entire restaurant. Now they definitely decided that they needed to run away. The guys rushed to the door, but finally, their boss promised that this was not the end. He just had to wait. The boy simply remained silent in response and said nothing. But a minute later, he sat down on a nearby chair and nodded his head with a smile. In principle, he wasn't against it. After such a scolding, he began to analyze his strength. It seems that it is still not enough for him. His next goal now is the book of mental development skills. Otherwise, he is in danger of quickly getting tired. He was lost in his thoughts and didn't even notice how visitors who had seen everything had gathered around him. Both men and women began to clap their hands and praise him. Even ordinary school children and a policeman joined in. No one could believe that he was able to defeat the fat Lan, who inspired fear in everyone. They all came closer to him and began to praise him. No one could have thought that he was so strong and hid his talent very well. The bespectacled man just kept silent and listened to their offer to even go to karaoke together or have a delicious meal. However, he did not like all these honors and he refused. Suddenly, the injured waitress approached him and, slightly confused, thanked him for his help and asked for forgiveness. The blonde already understood that she should have believed him from the very beginning, but she was very worried about his leg. He was disabled after all. The girl decided to introduce herself and called herself Shen Xiao, and she would also be interested to know his name. Our hero also told about himself, and if you think about it, he also can't blame her. Now she looks happy. Suddenly, Manager Wu had already come to his senses and approached his colleagues, asking if everything was okay with them, for which he immediately received a reprimand. Now he should deal with the security guards. The girl can't believe that some cleaner wasn't scared and accepted the fight, unlike them. The blonde blushed and looked down. She also asked her manager not to call her second, and he, slightly confused, agreed. Listening to their conversations, Wong Sha begins to understand why he treats her like that. You can't even tell that she is from an ordinary family, but why she wants to work as a waitress. It's surprising because these days, people themselves don't know what they want. It's difficult to understand them. His boss turned to him and expressed great gratitude and praise. Now he knows for sure that his colleague can be relied on, and the bespectacled woman already became suspicious. Why does he praise him all the time? Is he really trying to show himself in all his glory in front of this woman? The manager promises him a reward, a nice bonus for today. The boy interrupted him and whispered, "Who is this girl? And how did it turn out that she is the sister of Miss Tianjin who owns their hotel? And no one yet knows the reason why she should work here. And today, he saw her with his own eyes for the first time." The man gave Wang Xiao money and asked her to take care of her, because he now needed to go to the hospital. Our hero counted the money. Only 500 wen is not enough for him. However, he sees that right in front of him is a girl from a rich family. He thinks that this is a very good chance since he saved her. The brunette approached her and addressed her by name, but it seemed that she was a little scared. The bespectacled man asked her to worry about her, because he just wanted to ask her a question. Since he is the second lady, he is probably from a rich family. She looked at him with slight bewilderment, and did not quite understand how she could express her gratitude to him. Our hero said that it was a bit noisy in the restaurant, and why don't they talk outside? The blonde didn't mind this and they went out into the backyard. They stood in silence for a couple of minutes, but the boy interrupted her. Could it be that she really didn't understand what he wanted from her now? She only sighed heavily in response. She would like to hear the request directly. She is very grateful that her life was saved and promises to do everything possible to thank him properly. And she will do it, because otherwise she will not be able to forgive herself for it. Hearing this, Wang Xiao was pleasantly surprised. She is a very straightforward girl, and even despite this, it is very easy to talk to her. He decided to get straight to the point and hinted that he was having financial difficulties. If she really wanted to thank him, she should have forked out some money. But it seemed that Shen Xiao was a little surprised by this, and she began to suspect that he actually knew who she was and that was why he saved her. Hearing such a large sum, it seemed to her that he was impudent. 2 was already too much for her. Our hero did not expect to receive such a sharp refusal. This woman is really very greedy. The boy sighed heavily. He only asked for 2,000 wen, but on the other hand, even 1 would be useful for his needs. But for some reason, after that, the girl was a little confused when she heard how much he wanted, and soon she laughed because she thought something completely different. Wiping away tears of laughter, she asked them not to pay attention. Their conversation made her laugh, because she initially thought that he asked for 20,000. The girl concluded that it would not be difficult for her, and she would be happy to share such an amount. But it seems that our hero is not happy about this. He missed such a chance to get as much as 10,000. For some reason, the waitress suspected that something was wrong and was a little confused. She remembered that she had run away from home and now she had no money. But our hero understood her and asked her not to worry about it in that case. The girl approached him and asked him not to think that she had deceived him. She wanted to share that she was currently having some minor problems and promised to give him as much as 2,000 plus pay interest. But even though she ran away from home, she continues to earn money and tries. Whatever it may be, in any case, these 3,000 are not a problem for her, and she will pay them off without any problems. The boy looked at her and thought, he didn't quite expect this. He asked her to sit down next to him, and he himself fell onto a bench that stood not far from him. He wondered what the reason was for her escape, whether her family was treating her badly. The waitress fell silent and was a little confused, not knowing how to explain it all well. She doesn't have much to say about her family because they don't really like her. The girl is very upset. No matter what she does there, they say that she does everything wrong, and they constantly humiliate her. Now, Wang Xiao understood why she had become so harsh. She was not only disliked at work, but also at home. It is obvious now that she took this job in order to prove that she can live independently, all for the sake of recognition from her family. Now he felt a little awkward, and he asked her to forget about what happened today and about that money. He didn't want to burden her even more with his requests. Although the guy had never done this, he expressed his support for her. He was sure that she would be able to do everything the way she wanted. Shen looked at him slightly surprised because she didn't expect to hear that. And yet, the girl insisted on giving him this money. She doesn't like the fact that he looks down on her. The brunette laughed and agreed. He believed that she would definitely succeed. She smiled broadly back at him, and this boy turns out to be much more perceptive than even her grandfather. The blonde has now decided that from today on, her boyfriend is becoming her first friend. And now she suggests shaking hands and celebrating over a bottle of cold beer. Suddenly, a large blue car pulled up to them and their conversation was interrupted. The boys stared at her and silently looked at each other. A tall, long-haired girl came out of the salon and began looking for someone. The boys got up from the bench and also stared at her. It seemed that she was looking for them. The boy froze in place. He had never seen such a charming woman and was completely delighted. The long-haired girl turned to Shen Xiao. It seemed like they were acquainted. As it turned out, it was her sister who came to pick her up. But this time, the waitress wasn't going to back down. She only calls her that out of respect. And she certainly wasn't going to come back. The girl hit her in the face, starting to threaten that she would treat her much more rudely than she was now. The blonde grabbed her cheek. It hurt and was unpleasant for her that she was raising her hand to it again. Now her emotions have taken over her. This family means nothing to her now, and her grandfather, her sister, and others look at her like she's trash. The only thing she doesn't understand is why they don't care about an outcast like her. The redhead got tired of listening to this snot, and she raised her hand up again, getting ready to slap. But now, they stood up for her. Our hero ran up to her and grabbed her hand. Isn't that enough for her? He got tired of watching this bullying, and he yelled at this woman, whom he admired a minute ago. Of course, he won't beat her, but he still wants justice. He grabbed Shen Xiao's sister so tightly that her arm even hurt, and she asked who he really was. The bespectacled man approached the girl and introduced himself as her friend. But it seems that this only made her laugh. The long-haired girl doesn't think that he is worthy of being friends with her sister. He should also remind her that he treats her much better than her entire family. But his girlfriend doesn't want him to have problems because of this, and so she asks her relative to forget about this cripple. She herself expressed great gratitude to him for the fact that Wong Sha was trying to help her, but it was better for him not to interfere in this. As it turned out, as far as our hero understood, she had forgotten what she had told him earlier, and only his words made the girl think. His girlfriend finally remembered what happened. She was now sincerely grateful to him for this and looked into Wang Xiao's eyes, and he only smiled amiably in response. Suddenly, one of Shen Xiao's guards approached her sister and said something. This news clearly shocked her and she cried out in surprise. Now she knows that it was this guy who saved her sister in the restaurant. To his surprise, the girl thanked him and asked what he now wanted to receive as a reward for this. And then the brunette thought. It seemed to him that asking with such an impassive face for the money that he so lacked would be ugly. The girl noticed that he was thinking and asked if she should propose to him herself and asked if 100,000 yuan would be enough for him. Her sister was a little scared. She didn't expect that she would be ready to do such a thing. The blonde reminded him that it was he who saved her, and that is why she believes that she should thank him. She also said that they had an agreement for only 3,000, and then she suddenly fell silent. She felt somehow uneasy, but it seems that this is enough for the boy, and he decided to sincerely refuse such an offer. His girlfriend looked at him and a wide smile began to appear on her face. It was hard not to notice. Her sister was in slight shock. She had never seen her so happy. But if this option does not suit him, the length of his hair. And I also offered him a job option where he would receive 10,000 monthly. But she asked him to think carefully and not rush. He froze for a minute. This also sounds very tempting. But on the other hand, he doesn't want to upset his girlfriend Shen Xiao at all. If he agrees now, it will most likely be considered as him betraying her. And that's why the boy decided to refuse. And if that's all, their conversation is over, then they can go. Her sister was confused but still grabbed the waitress's hand. She thinks that she should still go with her even though she doesn't want to. Our hero began to defend her. He is not going to let his friend go anywhere, especially to these terrible people. However, he was stopped by guards, not allowing him to pass. The blonde fell to the ground, tripping when she pulled her sharply. The long-haired girl was confused. She didn't know what to do now. She didn't want to make her fall at all. She felt like she did it on purpose. The girl can't perceive this one as her older sister because she constantly tries to break her. The blonde no longer wants to support this conversation, and so she runs away silently. She is hated by those around her. They tried to stop her, but she still ran away. She doesn't want to see anyone anymore. The bespectacled man still continued to defend himself for his girlfriend. He wants this woman to be in her place one day. The long-haired girl turned to him and pointed her finger. This definitely wouldn't have happened if Wong Sha hadn't appeared on her horizon. The woman began to prove to him that she really cared about her, as if she were her younger sister, and that she certainly didn't like it when strangers lectured her. After her screams, there was silence. Our hero broke free from the guard's hands and came closer to her. He shoved a piece of paper at her that he had taken out of his pocket. At first, it seemed to him that their family was very familiar. As it turned out, their family destroyed a poor area 5 years ago and built a theme park there. Our hero lost his home along with his family. The compensation was not even enough to buy a grave. He began to tell her that 4 years ago he lost his parents, and that he also became disabled, after which all his relatives turned away from him. The guards listened to his story and simply looked at each other silently, without answering. Wong Sha feels an uneasy feeling inside that when he was in the hospital, the woman he protected didn't even show up to thank him for what he did for her. Besides, if it weren't for his leg, he probably would have been able to save his parents before the car exploded. He lifted his shirt and showed a big scar on his stomach. And now, who can talk about arrogance after that? The girl looked down in confusion and tried to say something. Suddenly, their conversation was interrupted by a security guard. He said that something was wrong with the contract, because they wanted her to return to the company to resolve the conflict as soon as possible. She also has a hard life. And at the end, she turned to our hero, saying that since his word was true, he should find her sister and take her home. They jumped into the car and drove away, and the guy doesn't understand why she doesn't look for it herself. What kind of concern can there be here? She knows that she can only be near the lake. It is quite deep, and therefore, the brunette calls a taxi and asks to take him to it as quickly as possible. When he arrived at the scene, he looked for Shen Xiao and asked her to talk before she did something stupid. The boy shouted as loudly as he could to make her appear to him, and other couples who were passing by began to whisper. Suddenly, she came up to him from behind and kicked him so hard that he fell to the ground. The girl felt embarrassed that he had shouted so loudly, but the boy got up from his seat and was rude to her in response. He was sincerely worried about her and got a kick. The waitress cannot understand why he is looking for her like this, because she is not capable of doing something terrible. The girl really wants to prove to them and show that she can be successful without their help. At least, she considers herself much better than her sister. Now the bespectacled man is completely calm. His girlfriend is strong, and she certainly wouldn't do anything bad to herself. But now, the blonde made the assumption that he must have come here after he accepted her proposal. And it was because of this that she asked him to pretend that they had never met. And yet, it's very good that the guy managed to persuade her to sit down on a bench and talk. He told her everything in detail that happened after that, and she obediently listened to him. But after a couple of minutes of silence, she stood up from her seat and thought about something. The lady understands perfectly well that he is poor and needs money, but in the near future she will not be able to give him the money she promised. She feels guilty inside about what happened and thinks about a win-win situation. Our hero did not quite understand what she wanted to convey to him and asked her to tell him more. Shen Xiao suggested that he agree to work for her. It would be like an undercover job. Not only would he receive a high salary, but Shen herself would also be able to monitor her sister and learn about the situation in the company. And besides, she already thought of a way how she could surprise them. But it seems that our hero was a little surprised. It all sounds like it's from a TV series. The blonde was very upset that she was refused, because he was her only friend. He had to agree to this, and therefore, it would be worthwhile for him to find out more about her plans. But the girl refused him, because it was a secret now. She simply asked him to wait for him, because she would call him herself. For some reason, a feeling began to appear in his soul as if he had been deceived. But now it was already late, and it was time to go home. When he arrived at the place, as always, he was staring at his phone. He wanted to raise his technique to the second level. He would need a month of standard cultivation. He couldn't wait that long. However, to improve it instantly, he needs a lot of money. Not to mention that he needs to pay off some debts that he still has. It seems like the boy still has a lot to learn about the game's features. He doesn't think he knows enough. In addition to the training interface, there is a market, and other places are closed. A map opened for him when he wanted to choose to study the system. It is designed so that the player spends 5 units of energy for each study. There is a chance to get items, and his scale shows a maximum of 10, and therefore it is available to him only twice a day. He now had a choice between visiting the Yellow Sand Village or the Ancient Trail, and that was the one he chose. A notification appeared in front of him, warning him whether he was really going to join the event. After pressing the right button, the boy moved to a very beautiful place and changed his appearance. He was amazed at how incredibly realistic everything looked here, and looked at everything with interest. The first thing Wang Sha noticed was an old man, and he asked him what was going on here in this village. The man answered him that this woman was severely poisoned. He was able to save her. However, he himself was wounded by the astral sect, and at the moment he cannot move. Now our hero has a quest, after his grandfather asked him to bring him an antidote to save the girl, and then to help him with his injuries. Now the guy has a choice. This made him really think. Wang Sha wants to follow his heart and do as he wants, so he accepts the challenge. Immediately after this, the girl came to her senses and began to look around. Only a moment ago it seemed to her that she had been poisoned. Finally, the old man was able to stand up on his feet too, and introduced himself. His name is Sui Muhua. He took out the books he has. This is the maximum. How can he thank him? The guys said goodbye to him and disappeared, and our hero just stood there and watched them go. He was given valuable things that need to be studied. Here is described how to increase the Tuna technique to the first level. In addition, basic medicine became available for him to study. Suddenly, the boy thought about this man for a moment. Most likely, he is a high-class doctor. This game is connected with him. Since he has studied the new medicine, it means he can cure himself, since he also gets the skill of collecting herbs. After pressing the right button, Wang Sha seemed to have returned back to the real world. The space around him began to darken, and various types of plants appeared around him. He never thought that he would be able to learn medical skills, although even this is only the basics. He will still be able to help himself with minor injuries in emergency situations. Now he has a good motivation to earn more demon coins to increase the skill to the maximum level to fully restore his right leg. And he is very happy. And now, it's time to go to bed. And in the morning, we need to go to the market. Surprisingly, when our hero woke up, his vision became blurry without glasses. Most likely, his myopia has increased again. However, buying him new glasses is not the right time at all. But then, in his eyes, everything became clearly visible again. He decided to try on his old ones, and as it turned out, his vision was completely restored. Perhaps this is the effect of his cultivation last night. Even though he didn't get enough sleep today, he no longer needs to wear glasses and he feels incredibly light and energized. Now is the time to think about something important. It will be too difficult to get rare herbs from stores designated for this purpose. But if he finds them in a simple kiosk, he may have problems if someone finds out about their value. He went into a small market and noticed one of the wild plants. Wang Sha decided to come closer to take a closer look at it. Its appearance is all bent. The leaves are withered. It looks like it is dying. But there are some sprouts near the roots that are covered by leaves. From all this, one can conclude that wildflowers are actively parasitizing on its roots, and he was also able to guess its approximate age. But still, to do this accurately, he will have to dig up the roots and wash away the soil. The seller noticed how he was looking at them intently, and told him that these were all wild plants from the high mountains. They could be used not only as medicine, but also to clear your mind. Their price was only 51 wen. But for our hero, this is too expensive. Others sell it for half the price. The brunette poked his finger at one and asked if they would sell it to him for 30. But the old man refused him. It was too small a sum for him. And it was at this point that he should have said goodbye to him. But seeing that his buyer was leaving, grandfather still agreed to his terms. The boy turned to him and just smiled, taking the plants into his bag. Suddenly, he received a call from his girlfriend, who demanded that he return home quickly. But Wang Sha asked her to meet in the afternoon, because it was still too early. And as it turned out, she found a way to make money, around 100,000. This idea really interested him, and he immediately ran towards her, canceling all his plans. The girl noticed that he now walked without glasses, but did not go into details. The blonde got a little angry with him, but I wish his head was full of money now, and she yelled at him a little. The boy told her that he had spent as much as 10 yuan to get to her, and asked for reimbursement. The blonde doesn't intend to do this, and so silently walks to her car. The guys got on and went to the appointed place, although the trip was not long, but because Wang Sha did not get enough sleep, he fell asleep and began to snore loudly. The girl looked at him and, sighing heavily, woke him up so that he would come out faster. When he stood up and looked around, he was very surprised to see the place. Now he has a lot of doubts in his head. He doesn't want to work for her sister, but his friend reassured him that, as it turned out, this woman's office was on the upper floors and he wouldn't need to go to her. She had her own separate department where she was the boss. And now, Shen Xiao will divide the proceeds between them. And our hero asked how much he will get from this. The girl was a little angry with him because of his greed. He just came to work here and already asked such questions. But they didn't have time to lie around here, so the guys went to the basement. Our hero felt a little uneasy that she was going to open such a department in this particular place. Why wasn't she allowed to take one of the 18 floors? The blonde opened the door and introduced him to their new office. It was much more spacious than her sister's. It seems that Wong Sha didn't appreciate her idea because it looked more like some kind of warehouse. His girlfriend just sighed heavily and asked him to keep quiet. Things can't go on like this. Our hero wants to talk to her father about this. But the girl asked him not to worry about it, because every business starts from the bottom, and this is the main rule. And the most important thing is to sell a lot, and this will increase their income. The boy sighed in response. He really felt sorry for her. The way her family treated her was terrible. But even despite this, she was holding on with all her might. Emotions began to overwhelm him, and he hit the table with his fist, so hard that the girl got scared. Shen Xiao became nervous and made excuses. She really lied to him about this department being big, although in fact it was the opposite. However, she has no one else who can help her in this matter. The brunette took a cigarette out of his pocket and told her that there would be only one condition under which he would work here. The guy now sincerely wants her to cry, to let out all her emotions, everything that worries her, and he will watch the entrance and also promise to always help her and be there. Just hearing these words, tears already welled up in her eyes, but he closed the door and decided to leave the room. After some time, the guys got together again. The girl looked through the items in the boxes. Each of them was marked with a standard price, but if she sold them a little cheaper, they could easily go into the red. The boy also threw a couple of pieces of paper into her hands, and she barely caught them. He already knows that the girl plans to get rid of these products, but if she does this, she will never surpass her sister. Our hero sat down on a chair that stood nearby and asked her to look at a certain signature. She had to look at them, and it turned out to be her sister's handwriting. And so, the boy thinks that they will be able to find the best way to sell them, and this will then be proof that his girlfriend is better than her. They are not here to throw away waste. They are here to turn it into treasure, because they have always been looked down upon and they need to prove their case. They now want to take away all the goods that are related to Shen Xiao's sister, for which the waitress sincerely thanks him. The guys began to examine all the things, but for some reason, now the boy began to doubt that the woman was as outstanding as she was presented to him. The very first thing they picked up was a power bank, which looks pretty outdated. It can be easily concluded that Qing Yu is good in the real estate field, but she clearly has problems in this area, which proves that she is only well-versed in the consumer market. Nothing more. The guy gives his friend advice to first figure everything out on her own. Perhaps her relative has already tried to do this, but she failed. It is also worth noting that Shen Xiao's taste and judgment are much better than her sister's, and the guy asked if she could think of how to improve the tea and who could promote it. The most important thing is to believe in yourself, and our hero wants to hear some ideas from her. The girl sees the problem in the fact that their department does not have a large budget. And besides, they need to conduct experiments to improve it. They need professionals. And at that moment, the boy gave her something that he had found today, and that would definitely come in handy. But there is no need to hurry. Wang Xiao told her to dig up the earth first, and there she will see wild flower roots. Their effect helps to refresh the mind. Most importantly, they help to purify the blood, treat cardiovascular and cerebrovascular diseases. Shen Xiao seemed impressed, but laughingly said that when she saw it in his hands, she first thought that he had nothing to do. To which our hero only snorted in response. He suggested using what he brought to improve their tea and described the ingredients. The girl carefully dug up the ground and took out a couple of balls of these flowers and washed them under running water. And only now, when she remembered again what I told her, that the flower root is a good medicine, she understood what would happen next. The boy threw it into boiling water and poured it into a cup. It would be used as tea. After the ball melted, he offered the drink to the girl so that she could try it and tell him her impressions of it. Of course, Wang Xiao is not sure that the medical basics are very useful. However, if it is so, then he will have a bright future and a lot of money. But at least he hopes for it. The girl was a little unsure, but she still decided to try his cooking, and the boy was waiting for her reaction. She grabbed him by the shirt and asked him what exactly he had done, whether his ancestor had been a pious doctor, or maybe something else. The boy didn't quite understand what she meant, and as it turned out, the girl was exhausted and hadn't slept well the night before. But when she took one sip of this drink, her energy was restored, and it made her a little nervous. What was even more surprising was that with this hereditary heart disease, most of her family members cannot work normally, and she felt that it really calmed down. Hearing this, the blue-eyed man was very happy and smiled widely. He did not expect that it would be so useful. In the end, the guys agree to secretly give their sister a little drink to confirm the effects. All this must be done in secret, but our hero even likes it, and he goes with her. It will be much faster to get to your destination by elevator, and although at home people look down on a simple waitress, in the company most people know about her reputation, and therefore no one should stop them. And before going out, his girlfriend asked him to do everything possible to keep his head down, so that no one could remember his appearance. First of all, they were met by the guards and greeted the second lady. They were hostile towards her and looked from the spit, but the blonde asked her friend to go ahead and not pay attention to them. First of all, they came to the first door. It is a private living room, which is prepared for their family, and it looks quite luxurious. And Shen Xiao asked not to tell anyone about this, because she secretly forced people to build this entire structure in order to spy. It seems that her friend is delighted and promised to keep quiet, but some not very good thoughts began to creep into his head, which made the blonde frown. To make him stop such nonsense, she prescribed him a good slap on the back of the head as a preventative measure. The girl pressed the right button, and they were treated to a view straight at her as she chatted with her colleagues. The first thing Shen noticed was her uncle here, and she wondered why he had come to visit them. The boy asked his father not to argue with her anymore, and to simply state the reason why they had gathered here today. She should already know that her uncle intends to come here, and this is most likely to ask her to give in. The men try to persuade her to take a rest, because they themselves know what will be best for the family business, because her father is busy in America creating a branch, so he handed the company over to her. Her brother laughed and said that he had an MBA with many credentials, and if he was allowed to take charge, he could guarantee that productivity would improve. Of course, they would immediately A within 2 months. Longhair was very angry at the way he treated her, but she reminded him that her grandfather had entrusted her with taking care of the company, and that was why, if he wanted to lead it, he should first ask his opinion, and if he agreed, then there would be no objections. It seemed that this conversation was unpleasant not only for her, but also for her sister. She began to clench her fists, watching this whole scandal. Usatai turned to her. He thinks that it is normal to disrespect your cousin. However, he is her uncle, and therefore hints that she should show at least a drop of politeness. Madame only snorted in displeasure in response. He had rushed to bring so many people here, most likely in order to force them to renounce power, but this was out of the question. Wong Sha turned to his friend and asked who was arguing with her sister. As it turned out, it was her uncle, and he was wondering if she needed to adjust the camera better now so that they could see what was happening there completely. It looks like she succeeded, and now the fun part is just beginning. A bunch of guards appear around the man, and it looks like her older sister has no choice. Xiaoyu stood there in confusion and didn't know what to say. Our hero began to worry about why she didn't have at least one bodyguard, because in such a situation there definitely should be one. But as it turned out, the company's finances are limited now, and therefore she probably fired them in order to save on expenses. The brunette advised her to call her grandfather. However, this will not work. They have mutual hatred. But last night, as it turned out, he fell into a coma. Unfortunately, he will not be able to wake up. It seems that now they are starting to act against the sister, and they are starting to really panic. The brunette decided to go to them and asked to lock the door and wait for him here. And if it was not him, then the door could not be opened. Even though this woman is quite harmful, he still decided to help her and save her, because these people are retired special forces. To prevent anything from happening, our hero decided not to delay and flew into the door. There are so many men here who are bullying one girl. He can't just leave it like that. All eyes turned to him, and Xiaoyu herself asked what he was doing here. But he had a counter question for her. Where did she lose her bodyguard? On the other hand, Wang Xiao doesn't want to argue with her at all, and so he simply asked her to hide somewhere. The brunette stood in front of her and reminded her that they were all one family, and there was definitely no need to use violence here. The mustachioed man looked at him from under his forehead. It seemed that this young hero knew why they had gathered here. The girl looked at his back and couldn't believe it. Could it be that he came here not because of her little sister but purely to save her? However, it still doesn't fit in her head. How could he know that she's not in the best position right now? The man and his cousin began to mock this daredevil. It was unlikely that he would be able to do anything to them. However, the boy's speech was interrupted. Our hero ran up to him and gave him a good blow to the face. But he had a lot of strength. His father began to stand up for him and ordered that this impudent man be killed immediately. The special forces rushed straight towards him, drawing their weapons when they realized that the man posed a threat to them. But it seems that their plans were not crowned with success. The boy rushed at them and managed to push one away with his foot, and the second one also got hit. Their other colleagues were amazed by such speed, and a little scared. I didn't know what to do now. Before they had time to move or say a word, the boy was already behind the next target. The brunette grabbed the bastard by the head and slammed him to the ground. Uncle Xiao Yu began to command them. He can't understand why they are all so surprised. They all need to attack him together. What amazed them even more was that he seemed to be crippled, but he fought and was holding up quite well. The mustachioed man and his relative continued to watch this chaos. They couldn't even imagine that this guy was so strong. Even despite such enormous strength, they tried to keep in line and not lose heart. They still had to carry out orders. One of the guards was very worried that this cripple was able to bend the baton with one blow, and he was very lucky that he used it to block the blow because he would hardly be able to get up now. And the boy began to laugh loudly at them. They can't even beat a cripple. The girl watched everything that was happening from the side and was delighted by his courage and strength. Suddenly, everyone stopped abruptly, and Parnisha began to wonder why no one was attacking him. One of the special forces soldiers was already fed up with all this and reached into his pocket. The man took out a pistol from there and was about to shoot the cripple. But our hero had already predicted this, and jumping over the sofa, he moved closer to Uncle Shen Xiao, putting a knife to his neck. The brunette began to threaten that if they didn't all leave here right now, then their boss would be finished. Usadi turned to his niece and asked her to calm her friend down, because everything could be discussed with words. The girl asked the boy to back off because, after all, he was her uncle, and his actions would not be very nice on his part. Our hero is ready to agree to such a condition. However, the man still has to ask them all to leave here. His subordinates obeyed him and began to retreat back, slamming the door. And finally, they were left alone, the three of them, and could calmly discuss everything. The waitress's older sister turned to her uncle and said in confusion that if it were possible, she would pretend that nothing had happened today. Grandpa was in a coma now, and he would hardly want to know about it when he woke up. Although the man was unhappy, he agreed to pretend as if nothing had happened, after which he raised his voice at the girl, for which he received a punch in the face from our hero. The boy grabbed him by the shirt and reminded him that there would always be a blind spot in the surveillance cameras, and no one would know if something happened to him. The long-haired girl is very worried about her relative, and therefore began to be rude to the boy in response. But on the other hand, she understands perfectly well that despite the fact that this cripple is now very rude, without him she would not know what to do. She needed to know the opinion of her uncle, who was now sitting and rubbing his cheek. With a heavy sigh, the man finally agreed that they could pretend that nothing had happened today. After a short conversation, Wang Xiao returned to his friend's room. She saw everything, and therefore greatly admired his courage. The girl began to address him as Sir, and with a smile invited him to sit down in a comfortable place. The blonde laughed loudly and prepared him the tea that he had offered her earlier. When he drank it, he also had a question. He would like to hear an honest answer. Is her uncle really not part of the family? He does not understand at all what is going on there because from childhood he was ignorant and incompetent. Thought about unscrupulous methods and his grandfather forced him to leave home. She sighed heavily and lowered her head. In the past few years, his progress had become much better, and so his grandfather brought him back. And after that, there was a moment when their family lived in peace and tranquility for a while. However, now her father is in America, managing a branch of their company, and so her uncle has become unstoppable. He uses the position of the eldest son to interfere with the family's business. It was falling into a coma that allowed her uncle to get out of control. Our hero laughed. It seems that Shen Long is a windbag who is guaranteed to come from a prosperous family. However, according to the girl, no one will hand over the company to him, and he knows it. And a good plan came into his head. He wants to wake up her grandfather tonight because he has the right medicine. A wide smile began to appear on Shen Xiao's face. Now she feels that she has every chance of a good outcome. and she is ready to go for this experiment. The courtyard around the Shen family's other institution was full of guards. However, it wasn't particularly difficult for the boy to sneak into the building unnoticed. He did it all quickly. His girlfriend was peeking out from behind the bushes. She could never have thought that this colleague would have such good skills. Her house has a very strict security system, but he manages to bypass it. The boy deftly jumped through the window and they didn't even have time to spot him. It's a good thing there was no one in the room, so I could breathe a sigh of relief, as he thought, but then the door began to open slowly. Someone decided to visit the patient. A short girl entered his office, and the first thing she noticed was our hero. She screamed because she didn't expect to see anyone here, and our hero ran up to her faster. To prevent her from making a fuss, he had to cover her mouth with his hand. The guy said that he was there to save the elder Shen, and in addition, he asked her not to shout, because if she did, the consequences would be worse than she could imagine. After these words, Wong Sha removed his hand from her, and immediately the girl began to ask questions. She wondered who he was and why he wanted to do this. However, in order not to answer everything, our hero asked to quickly tell about his condition, because time waits for no one. And it turned out that through video diagnostics, they say that the man's heart is extremely weak. From his appearance, one could immediately assess his condition. His face was bloodless, his heartbeat was weak, his lips were purple. It was obvious that he had been poisoned. The girl introduced herself as Li Jinyu and asked what the name of this young man was. But it seems that he decided not to disclose this information and only turned away from the doctor. Our hero was irritated by her silence. He turned to her and asked her to tell him how he could cure his illness. The girl was confused and did not know what to answer, because the elder miss had told her that until the specialist arrived from America, she should only follow the doctor's orders and give him special medications. Wang Xiao immediately realized that there was something fishy here. Why was everyone so fond of this foreign doctor? After all, she could tell that the elder was not sick at all when the doctor diagnosed him with a weak heart. And this is precisely what proves that she is much better than him. And so our hero advises her to act. However, if the elder is not cured today, it will be too late later. She was amazed that some boy could figure this out. To demonstrate this, the boy came up to him and unbuttoned his shirt, saying that if he pressed hard near the heart, going down to the ribs, he would see all the signs. The skin immediately turns a frightening purple, and many black veins appear. From this, we can conclude that this is a poison that devours hearts. It acts slowly, and there is only one method. How can you stop it? Our hero took some kind of tube from his chest. He doesn't understand why they put her there, because he doesn't have any breathing problems. In order to save him, he needed to carry one thing. Wang Xiao took it into his mouth and began to blow. The doctor was scared when she saw such a picture. In all her time of work, she had never seen anything like it. A very strange operation. Our hero also tried to observe his condition in order to control everything. First, his skin tone began to improve significantly. However, after a couple of seconds, the old man came to normal. His face already began to look much more cheerful, which amazed the girl. She had never seen that such a cruel method could be really useful. As it turns out, the poisoned blood has infected the lungs, turning into a toxic gas, and therefore, he must suck it out completely, which is what he is doing now. But then, their procedures were interrupted. Someone burst into the office. Some special forces security arrived at the scene, and the first thing they did was ask Dr. Li what this man was doing there. This made our hero stop. Now, I don't really want to deal with these guys. The son-in-law was at the head and forced everyone to attack the uninvited guest. Suddenly, a scream was heard behind them. Someone had come for them. It was Shen Xiao's elder sister. She didn't understand why Ban Xiaoyi had come here. The long-haired girl turned to the Ice Mountain lady. She really thought she was smarter, but she had a very slow reaction. This only made Wang Xiao laugh. He couldn't believe that she really couldn't guess what he was doing right now. And only now, the long-haired girl noticed that they were actually doing something here and looked at her grandfather in confusion. The doctor stopped her and asked her not to come closer. They were saving his life now. She was still not sure that they were doing everything right and asked not to rush into it so as not to do something stupid. Our hero intervened in their conversation and noted that during this time she had learned to think quickly. Everything that was happening could be explained to them a little later. Uncle walked up to his niece and asked if she was really going to stand there and watch as he fooled her and everyone else right before his eyes. She turned to her protector and stated that her family had no connection with him, and if he needed something, then he just needed to come to her, but not touch her grandfather. But this time she still decided to trust him. But if he fails, there will be consequences. Wang Xiao turned to the nurse and asked if she could stop the bleeding now, and also asked her to pass him the test tube. The girl did not quite understand why he needed her, and only watched him. Unexpectedly for everyone present, the boy took off his pants. There was an awkward silence as everyone waited to see what would happen next. Seeing what he was doing, his granddaughter became angry. It seemed to her that this impudent man had come here specifically to humiliate the old man. But it seemed that this very strange method worked. The old man began to rise slowly and had already opened his eyes. The girl, seeing this, smiled broadly. But the uncle frowned even more. The boy also sits contentedly because he knows very well that this is an ancient method of foreigners, to force a person to defecate his stomach through disgust. Suddenly, in a puddle that had formed on the floor, they noticed a black beetle. He was jumping around like a fish out of water. The mustachioed one wanted to crush him, but our hero managed to put down the glass and stop him. Wang Xiao laughed and looked at him from under his forehead. He just wanted to destroy the evidence. Suddenly, the old man had completely come to his senses, and in his head there was only one question. Why was there such a disgusting smell here? And why did he feel so disgusting? His granddaughter beamed with joy. She was very glad that he was able to wake up. The old man coughed a little, and the first thing he asked was why so many people had gathered here. He really appreciated silence, and asked everyone to leave here. Xiao Yu was so happy that she seemed not to hear him, and asked him again if he was really feeling well. The old man grimaced and nodded his head. He knew his body very well in any state. However, it was worth him admitting that this medicine was really effective, but it tasted terrible. When the grandfather looked around, he noticed a new person, whom he had never seen before. It was not difficult to guess that it was he who saved him, and since nothing more was required of him, the boy wanted to leave this place, but he was stopped. Xiao Yu wanted to talk to him some more. She thought that since he saved Grandpa, the whole family should now thank him. The old man agreed with her, but now, only after some time, he realized that he had drunk something that ordinary people would not drink. Our hero felt awkward, but he could explain himself because it comes from the human body, so it doesn't contain any harmful substances. The old man listened to him and asked who his teacher was. The young man did not lose his composure and said that this local expert knew traditional Chinese medicine perfectly and was a master in the analysis of lost medicine, and it was he who taught him. After the whole story, the grandfather expressed his gratitude and asked how he would like to receive it materially. His granddaughter came closer to him and said that he only recognizes money. He nodded his head and decided to give him what he wanted and offered him 100,000 again. This sounded quite offensive to Wang Xiao. The long-haired girl only snorted in response and was able to offer him another option, a job in their company. Even the old man thinks that this will be a good enough solution, and they are going to do as they just announced. But then their conversation was interrupted by a man who entered the office. He silently approached the old man and whispered something in his ear. After these words, the grandfather got out of bed and said that he urgently needed to meet someone, and also asked to take the young man there. The old man doesn't want anything to happen to him and promised to hold his son responsible if anything happens. His granddaughter knows his character very well. He is always so calm. She even laughed at the fact that he took a not very pleasant medicine. The girl turned to her uncle and asked who he had come to meet so suddenly. Our hero sat down on the hospital bed and said that he could leave himself, suggesting that they follow the old man. And still, the mustachioed man asked his niece to order someone to see him off. The girl agreed and finally reminded him not to forget to contact her in the company in the morning. The boy waved goodbye to them and said goodbye, and he himself is already sitting in anticipation. It seems that he will soon see the mysterious protagonist. He cannot miss this opportunity. He decided to cheat a little and eavesdrop. Having made his way to the necessary window, he began to carefully look in, but noticed that the most important person was not here. But in any case, he needed to eavesdrop on the conversation. Perhaps he would learn something useful. The uncle summed up that their family needed more funding because their income had dropped significantly, and this was a big problem. This is equivalent to a loss of $100 million. Their colleague asked Xiao Yu to check if there was really an error. The girl also expressed her opinion. The current situation of the company is really bad. That is why she asked to give her 3 months to return all the losses. However, they can't rely on her lack of experience. She developed a new product on the spur of the moment, and in the end, they still couldn't sell a single unit. The man asked the guys to stop arguing. Everyone now understands the situation that has developed. Usati turned to his father and reminded him that he had met some people and he wanted to take a piece of land in the west, but they needed to fork out some money. However, this is fraught with great risks, and they are not ready to agree to this. It is also important for Grandpa to know what the probability of getting this piece of land is, and he needs guarantees. A man puts his head on the line to prove that he is confident in his words. His father agreed but asked him not to rush. He promised to give him 3 times more money than usual, but it would take time. He was confident that if he entrusted him with this now, Xiao Yu would not give up. Most of their company was earned through the painstaking efforts of the second son, and since she was the heiress, she deserved to get a second chance. The girl interrupted their conversation and promised to release a new product during this time and recoup the company's losses and even make a profit. But her uncle is against it. He can't believe that the old man will allow her to spend so much time on this purely for the sake of an experiment. It's too big a risk. The man scolded him in response, leaving behind a firm decision that he would now like to discuss some issues with Xiao Yu herself and let him go. Our hero overheard everything and concluded that this grandson was undoubtedly quite vile. He turned away from his family and created a lot of problems. The grandfather stayed with the girl and told her that he understood perfectly well that after her father was sent to America, without the possibility of returning, a great responsibility fell on her neck. However, even despite his age, he sees all the machinations of his son, and therefore asks to do everything possible so that she achieves compensation for the loss and makes a profit. Of course, after several failures, she no longer has such confidence. She is afraid of letting down again, but the man calmed her down. As it turned out, they had secured the support of a high-ranking official. He has no idea who it is, but he hands her a red piece of paper. Before her now is the nomination of that old man for the Golden List, which happens only once every 10 years. As it turned out, this is a way to look into the mysteries of fate to find talent in the mortal world. His calculations were accurate without a single mistake. If they can promote someone to the Gold List, then he can help their family get through this crisis. But even though the long-haired one doesn't believe in it, she is ready to trust her, because the predictions are very accurate. When she opened it, the first thing she saw was the bandit's name, and she couldn't believe what he could be doing here on this list. The old man was surprised that she saw someone familiar and decided to take a look himself. Grandfather began to inquire about his place, assuming that it was first, third, and then second. But still, he should put on his glasses and read everything himself. There was the name of our hero, and the girl knows him very well. This hooligan who cured his illness in a perverted way is impossible to forget. The grandfather immediately remembered that this was the young man. He sensed courage in him from the very beginning, and Wong Sha himself still continued to eavesdrop. He couldn't figure out what kind of situation this was, why they were only talking about him. Now the man doesn't understand why she ordered him to leave. They should have taken him under their wing, and they would have received a huge benefit. Besides, he is ahead of the first place. It seems that Xiao can't come to terms with this. He still thinks that this boy is useless, even though he cured his grandfather. Suddenly, she fell silent and began to look around the room out of the corner of her eye. She had the feeling that someone was watching them. She had to go to the window to get a closer look, and she heard a crash. Our hero got caught. It looks like he hit himself hard. The guy pointed his finger at her and shouted, "This woman is crazy, and it looks like she really decided to kill him." But Madame was rude to him in response because he was here and eavesdropping on their conversations. The grandfather began to watch them and only laughed quietly, remembering his youth. Several guards immediately ran after him, and the guy started running away as fast as he could. The brunette started shouting at his friend to get out of here too. But it seemed she wasn't going to come out of her ambush. Shen jumped out of the bushes. She was angry at him for convincing her to come out. This area would soon be combed, and she could be caught, so she had no choice but to do anything. The boy, with a deft kick, knocked out the guards who were standing at the door to open the passage for them. Wang Xiao opened the gate and let his girlfriend out, and the blonde's older sister continued to rage, shouting something at him from the window, and then she turned to her grandfather. She does not believe that this man is similar to the one who is capable of ending up on the Golden List. Suddenly, he had a question about why the madame he brought looked quite familiar. The old man looked intently into her eyes, to which his granddaughter again sighed heavily, saying that she was not familiar to them at all, and he again forgot to put on his glasses. A couple of minutes later, he called someone and sent the boy's last name. He needed to check if he had any abilities. However, he definitely shouldn't overdo it, because he could use it. Grandpa is very happy that everything will become clear very quickly. He entrusted the matter to the right person. His waitress friend, when they had run a decent distance, could barely catch her breath. It was the first time she had seen a disabled person run so fast and fight so well. And now he himself is interested in whether she is engaged in physical activity. This short-distance running has exhausted her enough. Suddenly, he heard a quiet rustle, which could indicate that they were being followed. The first thing that came to his mind was to throw the flower over the fence. The boys heard a scream, and the guy grabbed Shen by the hand and ran. But then they were stopped by someone putting a gun to their face. Wong Sha was at a loss and suggested that they talk, since it was not good to hurt others and harm the environment. The girl was also a little out of her mind and asked who he was. Someone came up to her from behind and covered her mouth with their hand. It looks like they are ill-wishers. After that, her eyes began to darken and her legs became weak. Wang Xiao. They managed to knock them both out in a short period of time. The man chose the moment and decided to inform the client, and also asked his subordinate to watch the girl. As it turned out, this job was quite easy for them. They thought that this guy was much stronger. The customer asked to bring him Xiao Xiao Da so that she would be safe and sound. He obediently agreed. It looks like there will be no show this time. The attack went completely according to plan. But then, he didn't immediately notice that someone had already gotten close to him and swung their leg. This is our hero. He woke up and ran closer to him. Of course, everyone thought he was knocked out, but a blow to the neck wasn't enough. You can't judge by appearance alone. Even such a seemingly fragile invalid was able to quietly defeat his partner. However, the old man was sure that he would definitely not be able to defeat him, and therefore allowed him to attack him. It's a good thing that enough time has passed for our hero to be able to activate the Tian Can technique and break them both. Our hero makes a high jump upwards and swings at him. However, to his great regret, the old man was able to grab his leg and stop the blow. The brunette fell to the ground, but his grandfather looked down on him and demanded that the fight continue. It seemed that the most logical way out of the situation would be to simply escape, which is what the boy did. Of course, he didn't forget about his girlfriend and grabbed her onto his shoulder. He doesn't want to get involved with this company anymore, and so he runs away from the scene of the incident as quickly as possible. And his stubborn character was able to impress the man, but he is not going to pursue him. The show is just beginning. Our hero runs as fast as he can, still wondering what kind of man he was. As soon as he reached the turn, he noticed the girl. The mysterious stranger turned to him and pointed a gun at him. This is quite an unpleasant situation. Now Wang Xiao definitely doesn't understand what's going on here, and why Madame is asking to put the girl on the ground. She tied his hands and pinned them to the table, introducing herself as her friend. She considers him a murderer. The boy was not going to keep quiet and told her that the lady was actually his friend, and besides, he had never committed a crime. And yet, the stranger is not going to believe him, and already knows his name. Wang Xiu said that he was with his girlfriend last night, and this can be confirmed by another person, and also the owner of the restaurant, that is, his manager. It seems that this woman is too persistent, and is going to really check whether she was told the truth. And at that moment, a man came into their office and reported that they had received a tip. Another girl had been killed in a strange way, and the maniac had left puzzle pieces as a hint. She was given orders to continue to watch this hooligan, but she didn't want to do that at all. She wanted to go with him, but the man asked not to cause her problems. He has already failed more than once in his attempt to catch the criminal. While they sat in one room in silence, the girl could not find a place for herself. During this time, she managed to wind herself up so much that she began to panic, although the guy already disliked her. But he decided to calm her down. It was not her fault. The criminal was just too clever. The brunette interrupted her. If she really wants to catch this killer, then she should bring his phone. Maybe he can help her somehow. Of course, he can't promise anything. It all depends on luck. They can only take a risk because things were updated this morning. Maybe they have some secret techniques. She sighed heavily and still decided to trust him, however, on one condition: that he not call anyone. After that, Wang Xiao began to actively study everything that appeared and come up with all possible options that would be suitable. To help her, he asked if she had 5,000 won. He doesn't want to explain to her or answer unnecessary questions, but he promises that if she lends them to him, he will definitely catch the killer, receive a reward, and return the money. She has no choice but to agree, because she wants to save her sister and therefore does not want to miss the opportunity. Of course, she quickly transferred the money to his account. Now she just has to wait a couple of minutes. The guy had to learn several skills in one go and absorb new knowledge into his brain. Now his head is spinning. Although half a day had already passed, the so-called ritual was not finished, and Madame had already begun to worry and almost began to swear. The guy poked his finger into her pocket. He already realized that there was orchid-scented perfume there, as well as lavender. The long-haired girl pulled them out with slight surprise. She couldn't believe that he had smelled them and even identified their location. Besides this, Wang Xiao told her about the texture of her jacket. It resembled leather, but it was artificial. And there were also some signs that it was bought a year ago. This was able to make a good impression on her. His senses are functioning much better and pick up small details, which is really amazing. She finally decided to take off his handcuffs and go to the crime scene together. The guys soon came to the leader of the group, who was also not alone. The first thing the boss noticed was that she brought this guy here who needed to be kept in handcuffs. Before she could say a word, Wang Xiao voiced his suspicions. He figured out that the attacker was trying to copy the actions from the Saw movie, but he failed spectacularly. Besides this, he put forward a couple more versions and said that every successful escape from the police gives him a feeling of success, and this is his motive. The guys listened to him attentively, but that's not all. He has more to say. He is confident that he will be able to find the criminal because he wants to clear his name. And with so many police officers, he will not cause problems. He would also like to see the crime scene, which he was given access to, but he was forbidden to touch anything. His new partner expressed a desire to be present as well. She's worried about her missing sister. The boy was able to reassure her that it wasn't her, but she was still an innocent girl and her sister was alive. He looks at the lady who is lying in the middle of the room and promises to find this inadequate person. The other members of the boss's team laugh at the fact that this guy thinks he's a great detective. But there really is no trace of the criminal here, and besides, trusting the suspect is nonsense. Wang Xiao crouched down and began to examine the floor. On one of the halves there was a depression. Based on the fact that everyone present was wearing soft-soled shoes, it can be concluded that after removing their footprints, only the evidence of the killer will remain. The blonde sighed heavily. He still didn't see any benefit from it after all. A fake identity was used and there were no cameras in this department. But all this is too obvious. If you look at the depth, humidity, and the feeling of the trace, 2 weeks have passed since the day when 2 residents who wore high-heeled shoes lived here, and it is impossible to confuse them with the killer. The critic continued to chatter. He still did not see the benefit of his investigation. However, it is obvious that this is the work of a man, because 2 women who are short in stature and weigh less could not have carried her body here. The young man approached a police officer and asked her to write down his characteristics. Tall, slightly overweight, poor quality shoes with heavy soles. However, and this is not the end, there is dried mud on the sole, which also allowed him to draw some conclusions about the vodka. This area is old, but it has paved roads. Mud is rare here. Perhaps he came here from another city. The blonde seemed to be waiting for his answer, and then, this dead end, to tease. However, our hero only asked him to shut up, and now he is interested in where the victims stayed. The police officer reported that the previous ones stayed at or near the Sunny Garden estate. Judging by this, one can assume that this is not the first crime scene. Also, if you look closely at his victims, you can notice that which will also give clues. The criminal used 2 knives to cut in 2 opposite directions, and the assistant made the assumption that these were huge scissors. As it turns out, she is right. And since he uses them, he is a gardener. He really likes the way she thinks while everyone else looks at him like he's a fool. Now, he should take a closer look at the victim's legs, and the others don't understand what he's going to do. This time, everyone had a violent reaction and demanded an explanation of what exactly he had found. Wang Xiao gave out a lot of details, learned his age, as well as his clothing preferences, which further confirmed that he was a gardener. But the guys can't wait any longer and asked to speak much more specifically so as not to waste time. The brunette sighed heavily. It was already obvious that a murderer was hiding among the gardeners of the Sunny Gardens. According to them, there are only 3 working here, and they are in a high-class area now. They are conducting a strict selection for their suspects, photographs and registration data are here. Having seen only their photo, the lady made an assumption who it could be. However, judging by appearances is a lost cause. We need to look for a different approach. He found some tissue while he was accidentally rummaging through the trash thigh. It will definitely come in handy. It seems that the boy already has some hypothesis that he would like to confirm. He asked to lend him a knife. He was allowed to do so, but it was against the rules. And Wang Xiao also asked one of the men to lend him glasses. This is all for comparison of scale. It was identical. He thought that perhaps the killer wiped his hands with this cloth, but now it becomes clear that he wiped his glasses. The police began to nervously examine all the information they had. They concluded that this person is the one, because only he wears such an accessory. Our hero asked one of the employees whether he had most likely taken a day off on the previous days of the murder. and it was very strange that this honest man was a murderer. But if you look closely at the data, then indeed the weekend coincides with his actions, there is no doubt. The police officer is very happy, and a wide smile spreads across her face. They finally managed to find out about this case. Now after all this, Wong Sha asked to take them to his workplace. But then the boys looked at something, and the girl had a question. Why did the captain arrive only now? They were clearly crazy. They were trying to scare off the killer with their flashing lights. The guys ran to the place, to that very building, and it seems that out of the corner of their eye they managed to notice something, as that same good-natured fellow comes out of it with a weapon in his hands, holding the girl hostage. Suddenly, his wide smile disappears from his face when he hears his name. A police officer pointed a gun at him. He needs to let an innocent woman go. He gritted his teeth and put a knife to her neck, demanding that she put down the weapon or else he would kill her here. The lady was a little confused and asked him not to get excited, because if he didn't do anything, then they would be able to talk calmly. And yet, she was afraid to do anything further and decided to retreat. The police officer dropped to one knee and expressed her willingness to listen to his terms. The bespectacled man continued to rage. He considers all women to be terrible, not treacherous and ready to do anything for money. Apparently, he had a difficult past. Our hero was watching this from high on the roof. His ally really has very poor negotiating skills. He would have to use physical force, and so he jumped into the nearby bushes without anyone noticing. It seems that the gardener noticed this and demanded that he come out of there, while the boy was already flying at him from above. The long-haired girl just stood and watched everything that was happening, not knowing what to do next. Meanwhile, the boss and his team had already arrived to finish everything. Her sister was saved, which made the girl very happy, and she ran to her with hugs. It was very good that everything was over. This monster was tied up and was under Wang Shao's control until help arrived. It was already evening. Our hero and the waitress were walking and discussing the results of the day. He did not kill this lady because he realized that she was not the kind of girl who would betray her man for money, which is quite unusual. As it turned out, the massacre of a girl who had not committed any bad deeds was not his style. He still had a bit of compassion left. No one knew that the guy they called a killer would end up on the good side. 2 days later, our hero went out very early on the street. He complained that he had not slept enough and was very tired. Suddenly, he was unexpectedly grabbed by the arm and pulled around the corner. In addition, they put a gun to my neck and told me not to move. This is the same guy who attacked him a few days earlier, but surprisingly this time he said that he is not his enemy. It sounded funny coming from his lips. After all, he had kidnapped Shen Xiao earlier, and now he was poking him with a gun. This time the man asked to simply answer the call, and after that he would understand everything. Old man Shen picked up the phone, and now everything was definitely a little confusing, because he saved his life and got this in return. Grandfather remembers this very well, and therefore wanted to show him the way, saying that Bronze Wolf has information about his parents' car accident, and he knows who staged it. He was handed documents containing classified information about the police. There were several ambiguities, but they were hidden. There are too many coincidences in this case, and more questions began to appear in our hero's head. And yet, the boy asked to put this document back there. That's where he took it. But still, he will take this piece of paper that was written by Jian Shui. Otherwise, she will be in trouble if someone finds out about it. It is worth admitting that this guy is really ruthless. He still does not know who the criminal is, because the old man found out about this incident when he was looking for information about him. Wang Shao learns that this is the Luo family's business. They are to blame for everything, and now he wants to know what to do next. And only now was he revealed the secret that his Wang family is one of the 9 existing sects that do not know about his father's pseudonym from 10 years ago. The old man is guiding him on the right path. Our hero listens to him excitedly. He knew nothing about it at all. Now, Wang Shao understands that the path that was indicated to him is for him to study at the Bronze Wolf. It seems like he's being offered to become part of the criminal world, which makes him a little nervous. But unfortunately, the Shen family can't help him in any way, and even needs help themselves. It is very important for the boy to stick to his original goal now in order to successfully walk this road. And it's very good that our hero accepts this challenge. He wants to avenge his parents. Grandfather is very proud of him. But now he became interested in what promise he had made. It was that, being a human being, he would definitely stand above other people no matter what. This beautiful speech pleased the old man. He praised him and reminded him of the need to go with the Bronze Wolf, which will lead him to a special person. Our hero accepts his help with a smile and is ready to move on. This man would definitely lead him to a big shot. and he also asked if he knew about Long He's cooperation. Of course, he has very little information. He only knows that this is the largest group of the 9 sects in Shihe province. Since Wong Sha was not so enlightened, the man promised to tell him everything little by little while they were walking. As it turns out, there is a rule in Jumen City that every year the eldest holds a campaign to support the people. However, in reality, the leaders of this family are under the control of the Long He group. It itself is divided into 2 parts, the headquarters and local branches in various places. The authorized representatives at the headquarters are the board of directors. There are only 9 local branches, and they make unexpectedly large profits by controlling territory, such as nightclubs and bars. The old man decides to bring his student to the group leader, Chung Shi, first. They were greeted in a friendly manner by a security and escorted down the steps. It seemed that the others were already glad to see them and greeted them with smiles. The man, who was sitting behind the comfortable sofa, wondered why he hadn't been visited for several months. However, he now needed to sort out some things first. From the very beginning, they began to lecture the bronze wolf, but he only gave advice to decide for himself. The men glanced at the 2 accused of theft. Now they had to figure out who was who. Unfortunately, the man cannot help in any way, and therefore gives this opportunity to his friend. And since they brought this boy to the place of work, now the boss considers him part of their family, promising a reward if he can figure out which of them is the thief. Of course, the boy is primarily interested in how big the prize will be. In response, they clapped their hands at him. For the first time, they truly acknowledged his love for money and promised to run his own karaoke in Chengxi. The boy was satisfied with this, and first of all, he wanted to ask what the names of these 2 were. And they told him that in front of him were Huang Mao and Fei Da, and also gave him a small amount of information about them. However, Wang Shao doesn't know what specific goods they stole, and asked Uncle Chai to bring it here. The blonde looked him straight in the eye and said that he had already asked for it, he didn't have any samples, and he didn't need to know what exactly these things were. He just smiled in response and said that this way it would be easier for him to draw conclusions. However, he would still be able to do this even without the goods. The boy got closer to these 2, and a strong smell of sleeping pills emanated from Juan's body, while the second one's smell intensified at his nails. The brunette looked at Chai and decided to clarify whether they were allowed to transport this product, or whether they were only responsible for the transaction and could not touch it. However, he was confused as to why there were so many questions. As it turned out, these guys were only supposed to look after the cargo. Without his permission, they couldn't even touch it. The boy pointed his finger at the blue-haired suspect. But now, the man has questions about how he was able to determine this so quickly. And where's the evidence? The boy told him that he already knew that the goods they were supposed to be watching were contraband, and also told him about the suspicious smell of the sleeping pill. Suddenly, one of the suspects asked why he had just pointed at Fei Da and said that he was the criminal. Blue Eyes said confidently that if they were both not allowed to touch the goods and Fei was not addicted, where could the smell of contraband on his nails have come from? The blonde walked up to the fat man and grabbed him by the shirt. He began to justify himself, saying that he had no other choice. He did not appropriate the goods because it was his brother Hong who managed to steal it. His eyes darted around, and he also added that it was he who threatened him that he would kill his entire family if he did not comply and give up the goods. And as it turned out, he didn't tell him about it for the same reason. The boss turned to his subordinate and asked him to bring her here. It doesn't look like hiding the truth from him and losing his goods will save the lives of his family. The men brought his closest relative to him, holding a gun to his temple. Seeing his wife, he began to beg her not to touch her. He was ready to take the punishment upon himself. Our hero interrupted their conversation, saying that his family had nothing to do with it. The blonde promised him not to do anything this time, since he was new and didn't know the rules. However, if he said even a word, he would deal with him. Suddenly, one of the suspects rose to his feet and sighed with relief. Everyone stared at him and noticed the bullet mark on his forehead. T pointed the gun at him and fired again without thinking about anything. Our hero still doesn't understand why this had to be done, and so he yelled at him. The man sighed heavily. As for a newbie, he was asking too many questions. Did he really need to explain the reasons for his actions? Although this guy is not guilty, he failed to fulfill his duties because without realizing it, he allowed Fei Da to give his goods to Li Hong, and he does not need such a useless subordinate. Our hero still stands there confused and doesn't understand how to react to this nightmare. At the same time, the gun of this man was still pointed at his family, his wife and daughter. Wang Shao couldn't stand it and put his hand on the gun, for which the bronze wolf yelled at him. He should have moved away and not run into something bad. Cha himself has already threatened him with the topic that he will shoot him now too. If he thought about it, he probably wouldn't be able to get his goods back once Li Hong got hold of them. He should think about what was more valuable to him, the lives of this boy's family, or this thing. The guards and others present simply watched their conversations without saying anything. Wang Sha reminded them that he was good at finding and analyzing traces and details, so he asked them to give him just a month to return the goods, and if he failed, he would allow them to calmly kill him. This unfortunate man and his family. Quite a tempting offer that the man could not refuse, and immediately agreed. And for a while he let the victim go, and also promised to fulfill the promise about karaoke. However, even despite this, he still believes that he should suffer some kind of punishment. Unexpectedly for Uncle Chai, the sound of a blade opening suddenly sounded. Everyone became wary and looked only at him. The man froze in place and looked at his hand. Her finger flew off, causing him to scream loudly. Our hero, although he asked for mercy, cannot forgive him for this crime. The loss of his finger will force him to understand everything and work much harder. Otherwise, he promises to personally shoot him. It seems that this is a good motivation for him. He promised to give his all to the Shicheng group. It's a good thing that there's nothing wrong with Wang Sha being brave and teaching him a lesson in this way. After the injury, he of course felt bad, but the boy helped him get back on his feet, and also unexpectedly for him, he thanked our hero. For him, a month is both a little and a lot, and he also wants to take Fei Da with him. And he wants to go to karaoke tomorrow. The blonde also analyzes him. His maneuverability and speed are at a high level. He could easily kill him himself if he only wanted to. The boss began to look at everyone present in the hall and turned to Looney. He gave him the task of making inquiries about Wang Xiao and sending people to the karaoke to cause him trouble. He really wants to see how good he is. However, it is not their employees who need to be sent. Meanwhile, Parnisha had gathered separately with his new companion, who still continued to thank him for intervening. The man is much older than him, but he still cannot compare to his courage and confidence. He literally saved his life. Now his life is in his hands. The brunette just looks in the mirror and understands that in the future he must have friends he can rely on. Otherwise, he will not avoid problems. And this guy is a very good person. He has a good feeling about him. Our hero admitted that he was his first comrade and asked to call him simply by his first name. The man agreed, however. In any case, he believes that he should not belittle himself because he has achieved so much. Judging by their conversation, it is clear that he did not waste his 35 years. However, now he is more interested in whether this young man has any ideas. The sleeping pills need to be returned within a month, and the consequences are scary to even think about. It seems that even in such a situation he has a plan, because our hero's enemies are his friends. It seems like he's proposing to team up with Zhu Quexiang's Li Hong group. Since this incident has been exposed, there will definitely be a conflict between them. Our hero believes that there is no need to worry about this, because Huang Mao is already showing no signs of life, even though this was done for no reason. That's why they decide to take care of karaoke, because they need to earn more money. His assistant thought about it. It sounds pretty tempting, but it's almost bankrupt. There are people hanging around there doing nothing, and it's a pretty dangerous place. But it seems that Wang Xiao is not bothered by this. No matter how bad it is full of potential, and he needs to think about how he can make money from it. His colleague suggests not to guess, but to go there and find out everything for yourself. However, today is definitely not the case. Everyone needs rest. It was already a dark night outside, but our hero had to go about his business. Soon he came to the appointed place and was slightly surprised at whom he saw. Shen Xiao's elder sister was serving leg on leg and asked why she couldn't be here since she owned this building. It was easy to guess that she was interested in tea leaves. However, our hero warned her that she didn't need to try anything because this work had been done by him and the second sister. The girl seemed to feel uncomfortable and spat out the entire drink. The waitress scolded our hero for such bad manners, and it looks like he was taught Chinese by his physical education teacher. The long-haired girl laughed after that. It looks like she should throw this check away. After seeing it, Wang Xiao took it and still agreed to sell the recipe. And he hopes that she will pay him anyway since he needs to deal with Shen Long for her sake. The woman believes that this tea is really effective, but marketing and promotion will really take some work. Her sister has a slightly different opinion. She thinks that she can just make an advertisement and that's it. However, there is one problem that is related to the past conflict between her and the Han family. He banned all the shopping malls in the city, as well as all the supermarkets from entering into contracts with her. But most likely she is talking about that guy who was chasing her with a contract and who then screamed because she drove him away. She was too careless. Because she should have been more careful and thought about the consequences. Our hero gritted his teeth and promised to get to him by any means necessary. But the girls could not imagine that he was already worrying about them so much. The brunette didn't want to admit it directly, and so he began to argue with this evil woman. And her younger sister decided to defuse the situation and asked what the reaction would be if Han Kui forced her to marry him. The boy hinted that he would never be interested in her, which made the waitress furious. The boy started laughing and asked her to tone it down a bit because he was just teasing her. Suddenly, she began to have suspicions that something was wrong here. For some reason, Shen thought that her friend now looked like someone who was tired of life. The boys chatted among themselves. The older sister stood and puffed out her cheeks. Our hero proposed a deal to Shen Yu. If she finds out what Han Kui has been up to lately, he will then tell her if he can deal with him. But the only thing she knows now is that he often goes to Angel Karaoke, and this place seems quite familiar to him. After these words, the boy turned around and left. Now he simply asked the girls to expect good news from him. The eldest one finally asked him to be careful and also promised that she and her family would cover for him this time. However, the brunette refused her protection. He doesn't need the support of such influential people. Of course, he needs to do his job, but first of all, he needs to have a good meal. And during this, the boy wants to see if there are any new items in the store. The boy found an interesting ability called jumping into the clouds. He really liked it. However, it was quite expensive. But despite all his doubts, he decided to buy it. He feels that he will soon need it, after which he called Fei Da and asked her to meet him at Angel Karaoke. Why don't they go see their gold mine? The man wants to bring his friend with him. However, our hero will not be against this, provided that he will be useful to them. Soon the two arrived to him in a car. His friend began to apologize for being late. The fat man pointed his finger at his friend. His name is Qing Long. He, in turn, began to carefully examine his new acquaintance. It seems like he doesn't really want to get along with him, since it's hard for him to start trusting someone, much less respecting them. His friend tried to figure out what was going on, but it turned out that he didn't see a drop of masculinity in Wong Sha. Our hero asked Fei not to worry about it. If he has abilities, then it's not surprising. Where does such self-confidence come from? The fat man nodded his head, but asked to go easy on him. But his friend, it seemed, was not going to be soft. And so, raising his fist, asked our hero to show him what he was capable of. It was not at all difficult for Wong Sha to stop such a sharp swing, which surprised him. Their stubborn new comrade still continued to try to show that he was strong. But he failed. The boy let go of his hand and simply watched what would happen next. And after that moment, Fei began to understand. He didn't look closely that his partner was very strong, much stronger than his friend. The brunette flexed his fist and had to admit that he had hit it hard, and now his arm hurt. And the man admitted that usually if someone blocks his punch like that, his wrist breaks. However, his hand only hurt. And if he hadn't felt sorry for it, it would have been his hand that was broken. Now this man has sworn allegiance to him, promising never to betray him, and he does not throw words around. However, our hero refused to take on such a role. They are all friends and will look after each other together. Wang Xiao pointed his finger at the karaoke place and gave orders that they would be keeping an eye on this place from now on, and invited the guys to come inside. And the first thing they noticed was an argument between two people. The guard grabbed the girl by the hand and said that the young gentleman had chosen her mistress for her own good, but she refused. She couldn't just leave like that. The lady apologized for spilling alcohol on him. She was still a student, as it turned out. The man swung his hand at her and was about to teach her a good lesson so that she would not pretend to be a victim. However, his hand was intercepted, preventing him from striking. It was Lu Qing. He stated that his boss said that he would take this woman under his wing. Somehow it's hard to believe because Chaya never cared about such things. The redhead pointed his finger at our hero, because he is his leader now. But it looks like the bespectacled man has never seen him here before. Wang Xiao just smiled in response. It just so happened that he was looking for him. And so he asked to tell him that Ye was looking for him. Suddenly, some rather influential-looking people began to descend from the high staircase. This is Boss Can. He doesn't have much patience, but he can still find time to have fun. Also next to him was the owner of the Angel Karaoke. All the guys had bats in their hands, and they slowly began to approach the small group. Their commander-in-chief turned to his subordinates and told them to focus their attention on Qing Long, and the rest were of no importance. Our hero asked this guy to close the doors, This is necessary in order to make sure that no one will escape from here. The fat man approached the student and promised to protect her with all his might. The blonde looked our hero in the eyes and said that Chai told him that he could easily replace him. However, as rumors say, the almighty dragon is no match for the local snake, and therefore he will simply offer him to join them so as not to cause problems. The boy just smiled in response. He still doesn't consider himself one of his people and wants to show these people his place. And one of his subordinates was chatting on the side, laughing. He thinks that he will regret these words, but he will not do anything, because Erge ordered him to guard the doors. Blonde guy. Just in anticipation, since everything turned out like this, then why not start the fight right now? The man ordered his brothers to grab him as quickly as possible, but the boy seemed to be in no hurry. He approached the statue that stood next to him and, so to speak, borrowed a weapon from it. The guards were amazed at how easily he took it. His partners and others who saw this were also in shock, because this broadsword weighs at least 220 kilograms, and besides, it was welded to the statue. This is a monument to a famous Chinese general. But our hero promises to make him rich after he deals with these people. It seems that his opponents are seriously scared. They don't want to die and are already ready to retreat. But it's a pity that there is nowhere. Now the boy will teach the bandits what mercy means. And in his language, this means that if they are not kind, then he will not be fair with them. Their boss watched all this and couldn't move from his place. He couldn't get his head around everything that was happening. A couple of swings of the weapon, and his hand was wounded. The blonde screamed at the whole karaoke. After everything that just happened, would anyone else even think of speaking out against him? A subordinate of the wounded man approached him to support him. What a pity that he was so ignorant and blind that he could not recognize the great man, and now asks for mercy. The brunette only asked him to leave here in response, because before saying something to Boss Chai, especially something unnecessary, you need to think about the consequences. After this so-called battle, he no longer wants to see him. Cutting off his hand was enough to frighten the others. Phasia now doesn't know what to do with the rest of those who are here. The boy confidently replied that it was because of them that this incident occurred, and therefore they simply needed to be killed. One of them tried to save his own skin by introducing himself as a young master from the Han family, and the others would definitely stand up for him. Suddenly, a student approached our hero and asked him not to punish him. The man had already fallen on his knees and was asking in tears to have mercy on him. He admits that he had been blind before. The funniest thing is that he thought that this student was Erge's girlfriend, which made the guys laugh. The redhead whispered to him that he should let him go, because everything would get out of control and he could be in great danger. Our hero only smiled in response. He agreed to do it only because she asked him to, but he would still have to pay for what he did. The guy approached Qing Long and asked him to take him inside to beat the crap out of him. He continued to scream at the top of his lungs, hoping that someone would help him. But everyone just watched. When everything calmed down, the girl looked at her savior and thanked him with a laugh. The boy playfully hugged her. They had just been almost married. He looked straight into her eyes. However, seeing how confused she was, he decided not to continue this joke and only laughed, promising to be there and not allow her to be offended. He also asked Fei Da to help her settle in, and he and Qing Long wanted to go and meet the boss of this karaoke. The fat man showed her with his hand where to go, calling her bride with a slight mockery, which made her blush. As Wong Sha was climbing the stairs, he seemed to remember something and turned to the girl. She was a little confused. As it turned out, the boy became interested in her name. The madam smiled politely and introduced herself as Ye Zhen Zhen. As he climbed higher and higher, he admitted that her name was quite beautiful, which caused a smile to appear on her face. The boys soon arrived at the appointed place and saw two men in the middle of the office. Our hero ran up to them and was able to hit each of them at once. They only flew away screaming. They see him for the first time, and one of them even managed to knock him out with one blow. Wang Xiao looked at the blonde man. It seems he is the boss. The man introduced himself as Hu Bin, an investor and the owner of this karaoke bar. After a short conversation with him, our hero gave him advice to just focus on running the business. Nothing bad will happen here anymore. He thanked Erge, and after his words, it was as if a big stone had fallen from his soul. The karaoke boss also gave him 120,000. This is the commission for this month. Since he was very worried about such a large amount, Wang Xiao promised to keep it for now, but promised to fulfill the contract and take only his share. He left him in charge of this place, and if someone made a mess here, he just had to say Erge's name and everything would fall into place. Meanwhile, our hero was already awaiting the next conversation with this sweet student with whom they were trying to introduce him. The girl did not hide that she really needed 40,000 now. She would not be able to return them, however. She agreed to do everything in her power. The fat man again found a moment to tease him and promised to help him find a suitable room. For such jokes, a pillow immediately flew into his face. The joke was not appreciated. He agrees that this girl is wonderful, but he only wants the best for her. And that is why, without hesitation, he gives her this money. She must take good care of her parents. The brown-eyed girl rose from her seat and looked him straight in the eyes. She couldn't believe that he found out the reason from somewhere. Wang Sha started to play the fool, saying that he simply guessed. The girl bowed before him and thanked him for such help, which made the guy feel awkward. Still with a slight blush on her cheeks, the girl ran to the door. She would never forget what he had done for her. After her mother got back on her feet, she would definitely thank him. And the guys began to actively discuss his excellent ability to pick up girls behind his back, to which our hero only sighed heavily. Wang Xiao laughed back and reminded them that they still had some business to attend to before visiting Boss Chai. Qinglong asked what Erge should do, and it seemed like the fat man already knew the answer. Meanwhile, the red-haired man was still sitting on the floor and begging to be spared. Our hero just sighed heavily, eating a delicious watermelon. It would be enough if he promised him one thing, after which he would definitely not bother him. After everything that happened, he is ready for anything. Wang Xiao knows that he was the one who banned the factories from selling the Shen family's products, and so he demands that everything be returned to the way it was. Surprisingly, he agreed, and this is one of the valuables that Kang Yuncheng left for him. This guy secretly took pictures of him in various shameful situations. And why not take advantage of these photos now, at the most opportune moment? There were a lot of things on them, how he got drunk and behaved inappropriately. It would be very ugly if they fell into the hands of the media, after which this man became even more obedient. The brunette sat down next to him. In that case, right now he needs money, namely 400,000. He had never even dreamed of such huge numbers. His eyes almost popped out of his head from what he heard. Soon their conversation ended. The guys walked out of the room and chatted. Fei still seemed to not understand something. It's about that guy, Han Kui. He's very rich, but then why didn't he ask for more money? As it turned out, the brunette decided to do this as a punishment. If he had asked for more, then most likely he would have tried to escape. The guys are impressed by his sharp mind and intelligence. Now everything fell into place. So they came to Mr. Chai, who greeted them with a smile. But before starting, he asked them to wait a minute. He needed to sort out some things. Our hero sat down on a comfortable chair and just waited. Seeing the strangers, the guys started whispering to each other. It seems that Fei knows these people very well. The bald guy on the left is a wrench, that is, a boss in the auto mechanic business. He owns 6 workshops and has more than 100 people under his command. The guy with the mohawk is the head of the night market, and the red-haired one is the owner of a store. And not just a simple one, but a sports one. They call him the Red Dog, because he quickly copes with work differently. The blonde receives from him the amounts of money they agreed on every month. Quite a lot of time has passed, and he trusts him, and is not even going to count how much cash there is at the points. The man thanked everyone for their excellent work, and now he wondered what happened to Wang Xiao. And as it turned out, he also earned a little. Our hero turned to Qinglong, and he immediately understood everything. The bald one of those strangers decided to clarify whether he was really working with Wang Xiao now, to which he nodded his head. The guy took money out of his pocket since they had just started. There was only some 120,000. The blonde looked at them and thought a little. Our hero looked at him, and from under his forehead, what a not very cheerful look he has. Does he really think that Xiao took part of the money for himself? To which the man laughed. This is not true at all. There is exactly as much money here as he was told. He should be aware that the situation in Chengxi is getting complicated. There are a lot of spies here. However, even despite this, the boss trusts him, and now he appoints our hero as one of his comrades from the branch. Although one of them objected because they all signed the contract from the very beginning. These guys are being too cautious. Shouldn't they be wary of traitors? And they also think that just because he completed the mission successfully doesn't prove that he doesn't have some ulterior motives. The red-haired guy took out his phone. It seems that he has some information about him, although the history of his family is clean. But he is from the Vans, which lost power, but was previously one of the big families in Jumen. There was tension all around. Xiaoer asked the boss not to suspect him, because his family had long since fallen to the bottom. And when his parents were killed, no one did anything. He doesn't want to remember the past now, and so he tries to simply smooth over the situation. But his boss can't let him leave so easily, since there are already those who disagree, so that everything would be fair. He should try and bring evidence in his favor. Without any hesitation, Wang Xiao agrees, and asks for 3 days to do so. The bald guy from their branch promised that he would help if help was needed, and the other guys seemed to be up for it too. At this point, their time of conversation was over. Chai must now leave. One of his guards asked, if this young man could prove his loyalty, he would allow him to rule the entire territory of the old city, and as it turned out, he does not throw words around, and he will keep his word. Everyone has already seen what he is capable of, and as always, there was someone who was against it, that red-haired guy, because they promised that this place would be given to the first person who would pay 5 million. But he had already given 4.5, and it was unfair for him. The man walked towards the door and reminded him that the red dog was one of his top subordinates. He was the best candidate, but he was doing this for Ganlan's sake because he owed him a lot. This chatter was enough to get him dismissed, and when they stepped aside with a guard, they both noted how calm and smart Wang Xiao was. And then it came to light that if it weren't for the Luo family's orders, he would have wanted to keep the red dog for himself and not drive it out. As it turned out, it was all because his father had sided with the Luo family back then, and now they had found him too.